We begin with the Blair Witch Project.
We're doing a documentary about the Blair Witch. Oh, have you heard of the Blair Witch?
Oh yeah, that's an old story.
We can't kick off a found footage horror movie without including the one that started it all. Released in 1999, the Blair Witch Project utilized found footage so effectively that people truly believed what they were seeing was really documentary footage. The movie follows three students, Heather, Michael, and Joshua, who hike into a Maryland forest in 1994 to film a documentary about the Blair Witch, a myth that has supposedly terrified locals for years. However, over the course of the 81-minute fright fest, strange things begin to happen, whether it be finding stick figures outside their tents or their belongings rifled through, or even one of them missing in the dead of night. The friends film their relentless ordeals in the woods, and we experience anguish alongside them as their one source of safety is removed from them, their map. They are well and truly lost, and Joshua is missing, somewhere in the woods. Is it the Blair Witch, or something even darker and more sinister? I have to say, the first time I watched the Blair Witch Project, I was paralyzed in fear at the final frame of the movie. For a movie with such a small budget and only 3 characters for the majority of the film, it is so effective at delivering horrors and making you feel just as trapped as the 3 students. For any horror movie lover, this should always be a first on your list, and if you haven't seen it yet, I am very disappointed. Before we continue, let me know below what your favorite found footage horror movie is, and maybe give this video a like once you're down there. Next up, we have The Visit. Here I come. While most are 50-50 about M. Night Shyamalan and his delivery of effective twists and turns, this man does have my heart, and I will argue that The Visit is one of the most horrifying movies to date. This 2015 horror movie follows siblings Becca and Tyler, who are visiting their grandparents on their farm for the first time. Like all horrors, things begin normal at first but soon descend into madness and chaos as the grandparents start acting very, very strangely. Determined to figure out what is going on, Becca and Tyler try to unravel the mystery by recording the strange events, some of which include the grandmother projectile vomiting, screaming into the camera and chasing the siblings under the foundation of the house in one of the most chilling and heart-racing scenes in the entire movie. The Visit feels like there is reality behind it. How many of us haven't met our relatives? And if you did, you would trust them, right? They're family after all. The Visit feels a little too real with how it documents these kids meeting their grandparents for the first time, and the sinking feeling they feel when things begin to grow increasingly more sinister while being trapped on a farm with essentially strangers. Can you trust them? As M. Night Shyamalan loves to do, there are of course countless twists and turns to float your boat, and this movie doesn't neglect that, with it having perhaps one of my favorite twists in a found footage horror movie. The Visit successfully reinvents a saturated subgenre so effectively it feels like it was being done for the very first time. If you haven't yet watched it, you absolutely should, and if you didn't like it, you're wrong. Moving on, we have As Above, So Below.
Abandon all hope, ye who enter here.
In my opinion, this is the most underrated movie on our entire list. When I discuss my love for this movie, I'm either met with disgust or people being confused about what the hell I'm talking about. This managed to fly under the radar, but for those who haven't seen it, it's a love or hate kind of movie. Released in 2014, this found footage horror gem takes place in the Paris catacombs, which is utterly terrifying. It follows a documentary crew as they explore the catacombs in hopes of finding the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance discovered by Nicholas Flamel, which is said to grant immortality and turn metals into gold. Not bad. This all may sound familiar to you if you have seen the first Harry Potter movie, but trust me when I say this movie is wildly different. The movie in essence is based on the 9 circles of hell from the poem Divine Comedy. The film primarily focused on Scarlet Marlowe, a sort of knockoff Lara Croft, but in a good way, follows her deceased father's clues as she delves deeper into the catacombs, following unmarked routes and facing challenges and terrifying occurrences. The remains of the lost aren't the only thing haunting the team, but also their own personal demons that they must conquer in order to escape. The real horrors of this movie lies in reality as we witness the characters work their way through their own inner demons and become absolved, and in some cases found guilty of their sins. As Above, So Below is a mind-bending horror because you're never quite sure what you're witnessing is real or fake. Did a man just get sucked into a burning car in the depths of the catacombs? And are people in fact performing a satanic ritual? Or is this all in the minds of the characters who are slowly losing their way. It is a movie that is so incredibly smart and often flies right over people's heads. It explores themes of greed and obsession as well as touching on spiritual motifs. Sometimes you have to wonder if chasing something forbidden is worth the cost, because the cost just might be your life in As Above So Below. Up next we have VHS.
Which one is it?
I don't know, man. Let's just
Look at these, okay?
The VHS series as a whole is excellent, particularly 1 and 2, but in this instance I'm going to strictly be discussing the first movie in the series. Released in 2012, VHS is an anthology found footage horror and is compiled of a series of interconnected shorts written by various horror directors including Adam Wingard, Ty West and David Bruckner. The connecting story follows a group of criminals hired to break into a home. However, inside they discover a collection of VHS tapes, all containing something terrifying and disturbing. From a group of friends on a paranormal investigation encountering a demon to a man with a camera recording a supernatural force, the contents of these tapes are truly horrifying. However, the standout story in the movie has to be Amateur Night, directed by David Bruckner. The segment follows 3 friends who rent out a motel room and intend on bringing a woman back to record their exploits. However, things don't turn out the way they intend for the best, as the woman they select might not be human at all. Without spoiling too much, the climax of this short is truly terrifying, also unbelievably rewarding for those who weren't rooting for the 3 friends, aka me. Combining found footage with anthology is a big feat, and VHS does it incredibly well. Finally, we have Wreck. This is not only one of my favorite found footage horror movies, but one of my favorite horror movies, period. Now, this movie should not be confused with its American counterpart, Quarantine. I understand wanting to bring this movie to a broader audience, but I will always push for people to watch the original Spanish version, as it is far superior and terrifying, in my opinion anyway. Released in 2007, this Spanish found footage horror, Wreck, short for record, tells the story of a reporter and her cameraman, who are documenting and following firefighters. While things begin as normal, the firefighters soon get a call to an apartment building where a woman is trapped in her apartment. However, something sinister is happening inside. The woman displays aggression and begins to attack the firefighters, unbeknownst to them, spreading a terrifying infection that sweeps its way throughout the building, and no one is safe. Thankfully, we have the cameraman recording everything for our entertainment. The building is ultimately placed in a lockdown with no one coming in or out, with the reporter trapped inside documenting the entire thing. However, the infection isn't the only thing being housed inside the building. Something is inside the penthouse suite, and whether she wants to or not, our reporter is about to uncover the truth in the dark confines of the apartment. The final few moments of this movie are some of the most unsettling and chilling moments in any horror movie. The visual effects are unbelievably impressive for the budget, and the acting is truly superior. Will the reporter be able to uncover the truth of what is going on, and more importantly, will she escape the infection zone? What makes this movie feels so real and authentic is that it follows everyday life and forces you to doubt whether you are safe inside of your apartment building. Do you know your neighbor? Maybe you haven't seen them in a while. Maybe you've heard screaming down the hall. Wreck makes you believe anything is possible inside the confines of this apartment building, and the lockdown protocol is so believable it might just make you want to live in a house. You should absolutely give this movie a watch and let us know your thoughts below, because this one is a personal favorite of mine and I will not stop talking about it.
Number 5. Incantation. Apparently right now it's the ranking for the most watched non-English horror film worldwide, with over 10 million hours watching and rising. That's pretty sick right there, starting off, you know? Obviously I couldn't leave this one off the list with a reputation like that, so here we go. Incantation is a 2022 Taiwanese found footage supernatural horror film directed by Kevin Ko and co-written by Kevin and Chang Shi-wei. Released in Taiwan March 18th, 2022, it became the highest grossing Taiwanese horror film ever made. Yeah, it's received international distribution from Netflix. Hey, Netflix, so good. Since July 8th, 2022. Here's the plot. A woman named Lee Ronan narrates the film, imploring the audience to memorize an insignia and chant an incantation to bless them and lift a curse on her 6-year-old daughter Dodo. The insignia and incantation are interspersed frequently throughout the film to encourage the viewer to pray along with it. Yeah, it's pretty horrifying. Ronan, her boyfriend Dom, and Dom's cousin Yuan break a religious taboo while documenting a ritual for their internet channel. They go to a remote village of Dom and Yuan's relatives who practice a religion worshipping an ancestral deity deity called Mother Buddha. The clan asked the three to submit their names with the incantation to Mother Buddha. And here we go. That night, the group spy on the clan performing a ritual where a young girl seems to be willingly prepared for sacrifice. The girl, whose body is covered completely head to toe in runes, was left in front of a tunnel which the clan said is forbidden. Ronan waits for the girl while Dom and Yuan enter the tunnel. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's not good. Yuan later emerges screaming and Dawn seemingly lifeless. Ronan and Dodo's house soon becomes infested by unexplained ghostly activities, and Dodo is disturbed by a shadowy presence. They bring her to a shrine where a priest agrees to exorcise Dodo. Yunan later becomes possessed and sends copies of the tunnel footage. That's horrifying. Yeah. Just Chuck Liddelling yourself on a computer desk. Yeah, you're definitely gonna need a Tylenol after that one. Ouch. The film ends with some audience participation, and I'm not gonna spoil anything, don't worry, but after watching this, I kinda understand why it's rated what it's rated. Yeah, very scary, but also really good. As always, dudes, if you like what we do here too, hit the like button or leave us a comment down below. Which 2022 horror film has you hiding behind the covers? Number 4. Horror in High Desert. Horror in High Desert is a 2021 American film written, produced, and directed by Dutch Merrick in a pseudo-documentary format featuring found footage elements about the mysterious disappearance of a hiker in Nevada. An experienced outdoorsman vanishes in North Nevada while on an outdoor excursion. On the 3-year anniversary of his disappearance, his friends and loved ones recall the events leading up to the disappearance and for the first time speak about what they think actually happened. The first part focuses on the police report of hiker Gary Hinge. Toward the end of July 2017, Gary hiked to an unspecified area in the Mojave Desert, and the police conduct a search based on the last GPS of location on Gary's cell phone. As time goes by, the media stop reporting, and a private investigator named Bill is asked to investigate so that the case would not be abandoned. The investigation then focuses on clues in the last of the published videos. Gary appears in frame from his home, narrating a very unusual experience. The footage found reveals that Gary was able to find his way back to some mystery cabin. There he hears chanting that seems to be human-like, and he eventually is attacked and the camera stops recording. Reporter and the private investigator speculate that who or what might have attacked the hiker. It is mentioned that the police have made this footage public in the hope that someone in the audience might offer some additional clues which spark a series of theories such as Area 51, atomic testing, satanic rituals, and of course, extraterrestrials. Yeah, that's absolutely horrifying. I didn't even see that thing. They really do a good job at involving the audience in the experience by asking them to help continue the search, which makes the film seem so real but not real at the same time, you know? Hey, great film. And I say aliens, that was definitely an alien, you know? I'm the alien guy, I'm just saying. Number 3, Dashcam. Dashcam is a 2021 computer screen horror film directed by Rob Savage and written by Gemma Hurley, Jed Shepard, and Savage. The entire film is shot from the perspective of the main character's handheld iPhone or the Dashcam in her car as she live streams her actions for viewers whose comments are displayed. Kinda hard to read and watch at the same time, but it really makes it scarier, trust me. The film, of course, is produced by Blumhouse Productions, so you know it's gonna slap. Dashcam premiered at the 2021 Toronto International Film Festival in September 2021, where it was named second runner-up for the People's Choice Award. The plot: Annie Hardy is a right-wing internet personality who live streams from her car, making music and using her viewers' comments as lyrics. Tired of COVID-19 restrictions and homelessness in Los Angeles, Annie books a flight to London. There, she pays a visit to her former bandmate Stretch, who now works as a delivery driver. When she arrives at the restaurant, Annie is surprised to find it abandoned before she encounters the owner, who offers Annie huge money to apparently transport an old woman, Angela, to an undisclosed location. Annie accepts the offer, of course, and drives with Angela while live streaming everything to her fans. And this is where it gets terrifying. Angela then vanishes into a nearby forest, and the group find her standing atop of a tree, to which Angela just floats down to the ground before attacking the group, showing them her supernatural abilities. Angela hunts them down, and after a terrifying scene that I'm not going to spoil, a humanoidish creature emerges out of Angela, where it now hunts for Annie.
Okay, Angela, this lady's gonna just take you to some friends, okay?
Nope.
Yeah, I would be saying a big nope, too. Hell no, I'm not driving some scary old lady in the middle of the night. That's like rookie horror film nonsense right there. Great movie though, great movie. Very scary. Number 2, Spree. Spree is a 2020 American comedy horror film directed by Eugene Kotlyarenko. The gonzo-style satire follows a social media obsessed rideshare driver played by Joe Keery, who we all love. In an attempt to become viral, he live streams himself murdering his passengers. Ooh, it's a challenge of a role, I'd say. The film also stars David Arquette, Kyle Mooney, and Misha Barton. It was executively produced by Drake. That's saying something right there. Spree premiered in 2020 at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival and was released theatrically on video on demand in 2020. The film received mixed reviews, though critics praised Keery's performance and the film's premise. I really like this movie. I think it's a good representation of 2020 culture, you know? With phones in our hand every second, everybody trying to go viral, doing anything you can for clout. This movie does just that. Okay. Here's the plot. A young man named Kurt is obsessed with being a social media star and becoming viral. Kurt finds work as a driver for a rideshare app called Spree, then fits out his car with cameras and begins a new live stream titled The Lesson, where he instructs viewers on how to become famous on social media. Kurt starts picking up passengers one by one and killing them off with poison that he politely offers riders, as well as a bunch of creative clout-chasing performance heinous acts. You'll see. Kurt is then stopped by 2 police officers who grow suspicious of him. It's revealed that Kurt's murders have already become public, with Kurt being nicknamed the Rideshare Killer. After police are unable to identify him, Kurt tries to flee, but he too is pursued by police, forcing him to crash his car through a homeless camp. With Kurt's murders becoming more well known online, Spree is temporarily shut down to allow an investigation to take place. Kurt tries to kill Jessie, the other character, but she pins him to the wall with her car and then in turn takes his phone and continues the social media presence which he started. Jessie then becomes a nationwide star after taking credit for Kurt's demise and capture surrounding the infamous rideshare killer. Yeah, I really like this movie. It's like super campy and over the top. It's serious at times, but also very gory. Joe Keery kills it with this role, and I feel like if you were needing a break from that Stranger Things character, yeah, we found it. You did very well, my friend. Very terrifying.
The Poughkeepsie Tapes. For about a decade, this movie was the stuff of legend, the type of thing that's only found in a creepypasta. If you believe the rumors, this documentary about a serial killer terrorizing Poughkeepsie, New York, used real footage of that man attacking, harming, and killing his victims. Obviously, that isn't the case since it's a completely fictional film about a made-up serial killer and not a snuff flick, but that hasn't kept the film from holding on to its true story legacy. So the movie opens with the discovery of the tapes themselves. After uncovering 10 bodies in a residential backyard, the police unearthed something far more menacing: over 800 tapes from a killer, each detailing his heinous exploits. So composed of this found footage, combined with interviews with experts and one victim's testimony, the movie pieces together the story of the Water Street Butcher. Now, this flick is difficult to stomach and is best accompanied by a lot of trigger warnings. The film's eerie mimicry of early 2000s true crime shows like Forensic Files and Unsolved Mysteries is quite convincing, making it difficult not to get sucked into the reality of it all. Even today, people are tricked into believing that the footage from the tapes is, well, real, despite the red flags pointing to the contrary. This claim to reality is a constant source of controversy for the film, as is its deeply upsetting content. But the thing that stands out most in complaints is that it wasn't the movie people preemptively decided it should be. So back in the day, it premiered at the 2007 Tribeca Film Festival, where it was quickly snatched up by MGM for distribution. Now, they marketed the movie heavily, but it would all prove a huge waste of money when the film mysteriously vanished from the studio's 2008 release schedule. Though the movie could be found through less than legal means, it didn't get a wide release until it hit video on demand in 2014. But then MGM was like, we want to make more money. So then they pulled it again for a never-to-be-seen theatrical release. Finally, in 2017, Shout Factory released the movie on DVD and Blu-ray, which is more proof of the value of physical media. So for many of those early viewers, the fun of the mystery was, well, is the footage real? Why did MGM pull it? Was it banned for being too extreme? This and a plethora of other questions swirled around online forums in the time from those early trailers to the movie's eventual home release. What can I say? The killer's tapes are graphic, just not in the way that you would expect. Most of the violence is off-screen, implied, or described but not shown outright, forcing the audience to imagine the most disturbing moments. Spoiler alert, in what's been called the scariest scene in the movie, the killer, posing as a police officer, picks up a hitchhiking woman looking for a ride to the nearest gas station. And when he drives past the station, the woman's face falls into an expression of absolute dread as she realizes this isn't a police officer. And over the next 6 minutes, the audience is forced to watch as she hopelessly pleads for her life. If that doesn't terrify you, damn. I wish. Next up, we've got Capture, Kill, Release. Honestly, the title reminds me of playing Love, Marry, Kill when I was younger, but this isn't as silly. So Jen and Farhang are a seemingly happy married couple living in a suburban area in a nice sized home. They appear to love each other, they love their lives together, but then Jen begins to talk about their plan to off somebody. They've already decided to do it, and they're gonna film the whole thing. So in this movie, we watch them meticulously decide what weapons we're gonna use. How are we gonna resize our bathroom for a dead body? Home Rentals 101, everybody. And also they gotta pick their victim. So barring films like August Underground, apparently this is as close to a snuff film as you can get without watching the real thing. So, cross that off the bucket list, I guess. The camera zooms in on saws hacking through arms, guts piling up in the tub, and it's an unflinching portrayal of the violence from the perspective of the killers. The viewer is placed in the subject position of both characters, seeing through their eyes and therefore implicating the viewer in the atrocities, which makes the viewing experience that much more uncomfortable on top of seeing red fluids drain out of the tub. Unsettling and uncomfortable, this movie is worth sitting through for the performances alone. Oh, and by the way, we enter this film after the duo have already made and committed to their plan. But as they film each other, the dynamic becomes clear. This isn't just a single psychopath filming his exploits. These are two people with complicated feelings trying to navigate love in the face of the unimaginable. These guys aren't just married, they depend on each other. They are each other's anchors to the point of codependency. The first-person perspective allows us to better understand their minds as they become more and more embroiled in the plan. This shocking found footage film isn't just about that shock factor though, it's about the love and how we come to depend on somebody in a relationship. Sure, in reality, if your partner asked you to kill somebody, you'd be like, alright, I'm out. But this, entertains the idea that maybe you'd want to stay, maybe you'd help. After all, love makes us do crazy things, and because of that mindset alone, that's why I'd consider this a dangerous movie. Here's a movie that's less about jump scare effect, more of a lingering sadness situation. More simply put, Lake Mungo is a movie about dread. This 2008 Australian horror film is pegged to the overall concept of dread, that lingering sense of inevitable but unknowable doom that hangs over our heads. To quote journalist Vinnie Mancuso, the experience isn't exactly pleasant, but it is essential to have your rear end absolutely handed to you by a horror movie from time to time. This is the only feature filmmaking effort to date by writer and director Joel Anderson, and this is a ghost story. It's built from grief, one that's immediately recognizable to anybody who's ever lost somebody or briefly lost themselves. It's devastating, it's terrifying, and I think every single person who loves horror with a pulse should watch it at least once, and then immediately call their loved ones. So the first words you hear in the movie are "Alice is missing," which is both the literal driving force of the story and a heart-wrenching hint at its underlying themes. Told in a faux documentary format, the film tells the story of Alice Palmer, a girl of legal driving age who drowned at a dam in a small town in Australia. So in the aftermath, strange occurrences have the rest of the Palmer family believing in ghosts, the supernatural, yeah, kind of the supernatural ones, but also the lingering regrets of a life cut short. The Palmers admit that they never really knew their daughter, so Mother June admits she always struggled to connect with Alice. And there's some secrets are revealed to the point that the girl struggled to feel alive, even before her death. The Palmer's search for closure leads them to the actual Lake Mungo, to a cell phone buried by Alice on a school trip, and the footage she took weeks before her death. The footage has all the washed out graininess of a 2008 flip phone, but that's not quite what makes it feel otherworldly. So as Alice stumbles through the dark, the camera freewheels widely. You feel untethered from time or location until you finally focus on something approaching from the darkness. Slowly, very slowly, and it's not until it's inches from the frame does the film freeze and tell you what you're seeing. Alice's own bloated, decomposing corpse somehow stumbling out of her future. So there's a couple of reasons why this moment is so effective, and the first being that it's so goddamn scary. Just masterful service level execution of gluing the audience in place, focusing on a single point, and then just walloping you over the head with an unexplainable image. But the ending of Lake Mungo is also devastating because of what it means. Or more accurately, because it lacks any concrete explanation for those of us left alive. Throughout the many twists and turns, the Palmer family is just searching for answers, because that's what you do when somebody dies. Hey, if you've ever suffered from anxiety or depression, you know what it's like to feel outside your body. To find you're drifting through life like a phantom. Alright folks, next up we have a movie that's so heinous, I'm not even supposed to be talking about it. I can't even say its title, but let's just call it the people-eating mass extinction event of the 1930s and 40s. This flick from director Ruggero Deodato wasn't his first movie about people eating, but definitely the one that got the most flack from the media. So this director's been making films since the 1960s, and he's always had a trademark style. Flashy, grimy pictures with a hardened edge and plenty of schmeksh and violence. He was one of the many Italian directors who facilitated the people-eating boom of the late 70s and had already made one such film, The Last C-Word World, before he got around to this one. So despite his sensationalist style, he had already proven himself not only a very competent director, but one with depth and ideas worthy of cinematic examination. So this is the story of a professor journeying to the Amazon to discover what happened to a film crew since they're all kind of missing. Lots of brave young Americans, and you realize that this characterization couldn't have been further from the truth. From the offset, the movie looks at how the mass media portrays its fellow Americans, the marginalization of those outside the land of the free, and what it means to be civilized. So the young filmmakers are immediately positioned by the media as victims of local savagery, and when anthropologist Dr. Mungo is sent to find them, it's only through his embracing of the local people that he comes across the lost film reels that will piece the puzzle together. Broadcasting executives back in New York are foaming at the mouth at the prospect of a new documentary, even more sensational than what had been promised to them. And they're so focused on that sensation and the viewing figures that the sizzle reel they show includes such antics as the gang forcibly amputating the leg of their guide literal seconds after he suffers a snake bite. And there's not a lot more I can talk about when it comes to the plot of this one. So as is the case with many old school exploitation flicks, the reels were seized on the grounds of obscenity. But then something crazy happened. Those same reels became evidence in criminal proceedings. And this wasn't just a plain old, too devious for public consumption theatrical release. Folks thought this was a snuff film, and the weirdos who made it were apparently so brazen in their criminality as to throw an official premiere for it. So the director was brought up on killing charges, and was forced to bring his actors in for interviews to prove that they were still alive. He then demonstrated how they performed some of the special effects in the film. Eventually those charges were dismissed, and also, perhaps slightly more in keeping with Italy's progressive artistic reputation, the courts eventually overturned the movie's ban several years later. But by this point, the director and several of his associates had suffered considerable legal troubles, and countries around the world were banning this flick. Or at the very least, censoring it heavily. Also, before I move on, this film isn't entirely innocent. Although 6 animal deaths appear on screen, several animals were killed for the production, as a scene depicting the monkey's death was done twice, resulting in the death of 2 monkeys. So this film should be still banned for that reason alone, in my opinion. Alrighty everybody, we're gonna end today with a short but unsweet entry, The Taking of Deborah Logan. Mia Hu records the daily lives of Deborah Logan, a woman with Alzheimer's, as a part of her thesis. And as Deborah's behavior becomes increasingly bizarre and violent, it becomes apparent that there's more at work than the ravages of an incurable disease. Chock full of horrific imagery and effective scares, this film was a quietly shelved one that saw a second life on Netflix where it became a cult favorite. Gotta love movies that have already been knocked down for being shown a couple of times.
Number 5, you're next. Hey, family dinners are always a bit awkward, aren't they? You know, trying to get the gravy passed to you, trying to avoid an argument with your uncle about your career, and trying to elude the vicious sickos that are hunting you and your family for sport. You're Next is a 2011 slasher directed by Adam Wingard, who also blessed us with Godzilla vs. Kong, one of the finest films ever made. Made on a humble $1 million budget, You're Next is a horror movie that brings it to the absolute basics. One house, one troubled family, and 3 very dangerous psychopaths. An estranged family is meeting for a reunion at their summer home in the rural deep south, and newcomer to the family, Erin, is nervous to be introduced officially as her boyfriend's long-term partner. Now tensions are high enough with the usual family drama before the first crossbow bolt pierces the window, as the family is being hunted by a relentless pack of bloodthirsty animal mask wearing lunatics who seem to be doing this whole thing just for kicks. Watch the family fall apart under pressure, metaphorically and uncomfortably literally, as they're picked off one by one by their sick predators, until one of them starts to rise up unexpectedly against their tormentors. Now if you were a fan of the Hotline Miami games, this is probably as close as you're ever going to get to a movie for that 80s splatter feel and all the animal mask wearing lunatics. Your Next feels like a movie that got time traveled from 1984 in the best way. It's a throwback to the golden age of B-horror movies. Wet, gross, stupid, and in the darkest ways, really funny. This movie's almost a dysfunctional family comedy, if you can call it that. It's sinister, sick, gruesome, and hilarious, has an absolutely great sense of style, really cool soundtrack, and I guarantee you the main song from the movie is gonna get stuck in your head for weeks afterwards. Definitely check Your Next out if you're looking for some fluffy horror fun. I've got a DVD at home if you want to borrow it. Now hey ghouls and goblins, you already know that the best place for the scary video- Hey ghouls and goblins, you already know the best place for scary videos on the web is right here, but if somehow you didn't know that, always a good time to learn, so why don't you subscribe so you never miss a scare. Number 4, The Color Out of Space. When we think H.P. Lovecraft, we tend to think of giant squid monsters and incomprehensible madness. Well, this movie's got one of those in folds, and it's not the squid monster. The Color Out of Space is a 2019 horror movie directed by Richard Stanley, adapting the H.P. Lovecraft story of the exact same name, but modernizing it slightly, bringing it up to the 21st century. The story details a father moving his family to his late father's farm farm, escaping the bright lights and humdrum of city life, moving to his hometown of Arkham, the exceedingly cursed city from Lovecraft's writings. What should be a breath of fresh air and lovely times in the cottage turns to a nightmare when an asteroid falls to the farm, releasing with it a mysterious color that seeps into the farmland. A color out of space, if you will. It affects the minds of everyone around the farm, all the animals, and begins to seep into the water and drive everyone to incomprehensible madness. Nick Cage plays the patriarch of the Gardner family, and let me tell you, there could not possibly have been a better actor for the lead in a movie about slowly going mad. I mean, Nick Cage on his absolute best day already seems like he's about 2 screws short of absolute madness, so watching him in this is a treat. You spend the entire time wondering if the insanity is taking him over and consuming his brain, or if that's just how Nicolas Cage talks and he thinks he's doing a New England accent right now. Color Out of Space builds really slowly, leaving you on edge the entire time, and when the madness sets in, it sets in hard as you painfully watch the farmstead fall, desperate that maybe, just maybe, someone will pull through against the immeasurable horror of some entity beyond the cosmos. It captures Lovecraft's writing effortlessly and brings it to the modern age flawlessly, with all the blood and insanity you could hope for. Number 3. The Void. Our next entry on this list is The Void, a 2016 horror flick by Steven Kostanski, another Lovecraft horror movie. Your host has a little bit of a bias, and this one's Canadian made, so I have to include it based on that alone. It also totally rocks, so there is that. The Void is another flick that feels like it time traveled through the mid-80s, and maybe it's just my personal taste, but that is very much a good thing. The Void seems like the kind of thing John Carpenter would have slapped his name on. A small-town deputy has his night wildly disturbed when he finds someone suffering from violent injuries, and after taking him to the local hospital, finds himself trapped in the hospital with his ex-wife, a nurse, who's dealing with a crisis of her own as the hospital is being overrun by an onslaught of mysterious injuries and madness. The two estranged lovers find themselves caught in a blood-soaked conflict between a sinister cult and some entity that appears able to revive the dead, albeit a bit twisted into horrifying monstrosities of flesh and bone. Now, if you're like me and you think The Thing is the greatest horror movie ever made, The Void feels like it could be its unofficial sequel. It's better than the actual sequel prequel to The Thing that they made. The special effects on the monsters are fantastic. If you're the kind of ghoul who loves puppets, prosthetics, and gallons worth of corn syrup blood, The Void has everything you are looking for in those 3 spades. And the plot is fun, and it has some good twists and turns, but let's be honest here. You're watching this one because it's got very gross monsters and really cool Lovecraft-inspired mythos of cults and a great god beyond the stars. You want my advice? Grab a friend or two, order the largest, greasiest pizza your local favorite spot has, grab a 2-liter of something carbonated, and have a great Friday night with this one. The Void to me is what a good horror movie should be. Gross, scary, a little stupid, and a ton of fun. Number 2, Hush. Okay, enough movies about incomprehensible horrors from beyond the stars. Let's reel it in a bit, and let's get back to some comprehensible horror. Home invasion. Lock those doors. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn the volume up. Hush is a 2016 slasher home invasion movie coming to us from Blumhouse horror icon Mike Flanagan, director of a ton of amazing horror projects like Oculus, Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, The Haunting of shows, and Hush is no exception to that rule. A deaf and mute horror writer, that's why I did that before, who lives alone with her cat in the woods with a few isolated neighbors around her, becomes the unwilling target in the most dangerous game when a twisted hunter decides to make her his prey. After hunting her neighbor with a crossbow, he sets his sight on her next. When he learns that his next victim is deaf and mute, it seems like he finds himself thrilled at the possibility of a challenge. Now, Hush could have very easily just been your run-of-the-mill slasher home invasion movie, but it stands a lot taller than that with some incredibly fantastic sound design. I mean, I would hope so, given the premise of the movie and the name of the movie. The movie is so tense and saves its sounds really effectively for when it knows it's going to be the scariest. Makes it a lot scarier than the usual horror movies with a bombastic booming soundtrack and tons of scare hordes. It lets you really breathe in the tension. The cat and mouse game between the protagonist Maddie and the unnamed hunter feels deeply personal, putting you smack dab in the middle of it, chewing your fingernails the entire time as you hope for the best. Please check out Hush. Now, number 1, Green Room. Coming in at our number 1 spot is one of my favorite horror thrillers of all time, Green Room, an A24 horror classic before that was even a cool thing to describe your movie as. A failing Midwestern punk band are trying to hit it big while traveling the Northwest, barely scraping by on instant ramen and van life when they agree to play a gig at a rural roadhouse. Absolutely thrilled at the prospect of getting paid for once, the band takes the gig without asking any questions, only to swiftly discover upon arriving that they are in bad company. The bar is ran and owned by a skinhead gang who don't take kindly to them whatsoever. After the bassist witnesses a crime in the eponymous Green Room, the band is trapped by the gang who refuses to let them leave. Alive. From here, the movie turns into a sort of reverse home invasion as the band tries desperately to escape the clutches of the gang by any means necessary. Green Room is tense. You are going to feel like you are trapped in there with them. If you've ever survived a local DIY show basement, then the sights of Green Room will look pretty familiar to you. Setting a high-octane horror movie in such a hostile environment that you'll recognize makes it feel all the more real. You know, I've seen countless horror movies in haunted houses, but I can't name that many in a bar basement. Green Room is horror at some of its best, taking a concept I guarantee you haven't seen before and exploring it beyond just a simple bloody slasher. Fantastic camera work, dark humor, and a gripping plot with lovable characters and truly hateable villains. We are 3 paragraphs into me talking about this, and I haven't even dropped the biggest bomb, which is that the leader of the skinhead gang is played by Sir Patrick Stewart in one of his most unhinged roles ever since maybe American Dad. I'd say he steals this thing, but honestly everybody delivers. Anton Yelchin also delivers one of the best performances of his career as the band's weary, tortured bassist. Go into Green Room expecting a super tense, shockingly gory, but amazing horror movie if you can brave it. Just make sure you get a stamp on your wrist so you can leave.
Number 5, The House That Jack Built. Director Lars von Trier has become known for his hard-to-sit-through movies throughout his career, so it makes sense that The House That Jack Built would be a movie made for only those with very strong constitutions. I am not one of those. The movie follows the main antagonist, Jack, a psychotic serial killer who must account for his crimes in hell. But before he does so, he is led around to the 9 circles of hell by the Roman poet, Virgil, who details his crimes through a series of flashbacks. The first killing starts off with Jack trying to help out a lady who had some car trouble on the road. However, she is ungrateful for his help when it does not work out, so, he just kills her, freezes her body in his warehouse. As you do. His second killing involves forming a friendship with a widow, Claire, and then proceeding to impale her. He is almost caught by a nearby police officer, but manages to quickly hide her body in the bushes before he can see. This is when he begins to form his serial killer alias, Mr. Sophistication, and starts sending in anonymous letters and photos of his victims to the police. Jack is shown having difficulty forming relationships with women. We kinda saw that, but in case you didn't see the obvious. He kills his first girlfriend's offspring on a hunting trip and forces her to have a picnic with their corpses before he kills her as well. The killing of his second girlfriend, Jacqueline, is more gruesome as he chops off her breasts and keeps them as souvenirs. Now Jack is eventually caught when carrying out his 5th killing, which requires him to purchase a weapon. He gets tipped off to the police, who chase him to said warehouse, but before they can catch him, Jack encounters Virgil, known as Verge, who takes him back to hell. Now at this point, Verge has finished recounting his crimes, and they have reached the 9th center of hell. The center circle. Jack tries to escape by running to a staircase, but instead he falls into the abyss, finally ensuing justice for his actions. The movie is said to have led to over 100 walkouts at the Cannes Film Festival, with many uttering their disgust towards the film. From there, news spread quickly, putting this movie's names on the lips of many horror enthusiasts. Most have probably only seen the theatrical cut, but IFC Films actually got in trouble for its release of the unrated cut, not long before the film's wide release, further adding to the notoriety of the film. The film polarized critics and was described as 2018's most extreme and controversial horror movie. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 60% based on 138 reviews and an average rating of 6.2 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, "The House That Jack Built presents writer-director Lars von Trier at his most proudly uncompromising, hard to ignore, and for many viewers, just as difficult to digest." In October 2018, it was reported that the director's cut, which is the uncensored version that played at said film festival, would play in US theaters for one night in November, followed by an edited R-rated version release in selected theaters and on digital platforms in December. Now, immediately following the unrated director's cut screenings, the Motion Picture Association of America, otherwise known as MPAA, issued a statement condemning the screening for not adhering to the board's guidelines. In the statement, it was noted that the screening of an unrated version of the film in such close proximity to the release of the rated version without obtaining a waiver is in violation of the rating system's rules. Uh-oh. Failure to comply with the rules can create confusion among parents and undermine the rating system. It may result in the imposition of sanctions against the film submitter. Thankfully though, by a couple of days later, I think it was the beginning of December, the MPAA had resolved the dispute with IFC Films by pushing the digital release of the director's cut back to 2019, as opposed to coinciding with the theatrical release of the R-rated cut. But the next day, the day after that all got figured out, the director's cut was released to purchase on YouTube for several hours. That's it, just 7 hours. How does the saying go again? Controversy creates cash? Number 4, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This film from 1974 arguably puts slasher films as a whole on the map. In this film, we see Sally and her friends traveling through Texas when they find themselves short on gas. And when the local pumps are empty, they soon find themselves at the residence of the Sawyer family, a clan of people eaters who kill tourists for consumption. Doing the dirty work is Leatherface, the family's chainsaw-wielding butcher who soon makes short work of Sally's friends. The brazen butchery of this film proved way too much for moviegoers across the world and was banned in many countries. As a matter of fact, the British Board of Film Classification had long refused its certification for the uncut theatrical version, and in 1984 they also refused to certify it for home video, amid a moral panic surrounding video nasties. After the retirement of BBFC director James Furman in 1999, the board passed the film uncut for theatrical and video distribution with an 18 certificate, but this was almost 25 years after the original release, which is almost as long as I've been alive. Due to the film's violent content, it struggled to find a distributor, but was eventually acquired by the Bryanston Distributing Company. It originally had an X rating from the MPAA, and it's not hard to see why. The director did actually limit the quantity of on-screen gore in hopes of securing a PG rating, but the MPAA was like, no, you're getting an R, be happy with it. I believe it was banned in about several countries, and numerous theaters stopped showing the film in response to complaints about its violence. The death scenes were way ahead of their time. One particular kill lives in infamy and sees good old Leatherface impaling one of the characters onto a meat hook to later be slaughtered, but not before she's forced to watch the infamous killer and one of her friends with his trusty chainsaw. It has since gained a reputation as one of the best and most influential horror films. It is credited, once again, with originating several elements common in the slasher genre, including the use of power tools as weapons, the characterization of the killer as a large, hulking masked figure, and the killing of victims. Empire described it as the most purely horrifying horror movie ever made, and called it never less than totally committed to scaring you witless. Fun fact? I think it's fun. The character of Leatherface and minor story details were inspired by the crimes of real-life mass killer Ed Gein. So, make of that what you will. Number 3, all things Terrifier. Technically, I'm cheating a little bit here with a multiple for one special, but I'm sure you'll understand why in a moment, I promise. I will fully admit I don't really love slasher and gory films outside of Repo the Genetic Opera, but what I've seen of Art the Clown from a friend of mine, who cosplays him very well, I enjoy the character. Speaking of the chaotic clown man, for those who might not be aware, director Damien Leone first brought Art the Clown to life in 2008's The Ninth Circle. Surprisingly, Art the Clown's role in the short is relatively small, but he's easily the most memorable part. The film opens with a young woman named Casey waiting on a train when she sees Art sit across from her. Needless to say, she's quickly creeped out by Art the Clown, and after tricking her with a gift, he injects her with a syringe and kidnaps her. Art the Clown disappears from the Ninth Circle following this opening, with Casey waking up underground and being tormented by a demonic cult. The second half of the short is still atmospheric, though some of the masks used for the demon characters don't hold up nearly as well as, Art's black and white mime-like makeup. He eventually got the spotlight in 2011's Terrifier short, which followed a young woman who witnesses one of the villain's killings. After appearing in All Hallows Eve, director Damien Leone adapted Terrifier into a feature-length film in 2016, with the clown stalking 3 young women on Halloween. It's trashy in the best ways, featuring a jaw-dropping upside-down kill, and as most good flicks do, leaves the audience craving more. Enter Terrifier 2, last year's most shocking horror movie, responsible for fainting and vomiting across movie theaters worldwide. So after being resurrected by an unknown entity following the Miles County Massacre, Art the Clown uses a hammer to brutally kill the coroner investigating his body. He goes to the laundromat to clean his red-soaked garments, where he encounters a little pale girl, a mysterious sinister entity in similar clown attire. A lone patron sees Art interacting with the girl, who is invisible to him, before being killed by Art. A year later, teenager Sienna Shaw is putting the finishing touches on her Halloween costume made by her father, who recently passed away of a brain tumor. Now Sienna's younger brother Jonathan wants to dress as Art for Halloween, and has become fixated with him since discovering sketches of him and his victims in their father's sketchbook. Now that night, Sienna has a nightmare where she encounters Art and awakens to a fire on her dresser, which destroys the wings that were needed for her costume, while the sword that was a gift to her from her father remains unscathed. On Halloween, Jonathan sees Art and the little pale girl at school playing with a dead opossum. At that same time, Sienna and her friend Allie go to the costume shop shop where they encounter Art. Art, in classic fashion, kills the shop vendor and later breaks into Allie's home, where he brutally maims her. Allie's mother is also killed when she discovers her daughter's still breathing flayed body. Jonathan shows Sienna and their mother Barbara his father's sketchbook of Art, filled with newspaper clippings of killings connected to him, revealing that the little pale girl bears a resemblance of his first victim named Emily Crane, the daughter of a circus performer whose body was discovered in a makeup trailer. Jonathan believes their father knew how to stop Art, but nobody else believes him. After Barbara tears up the sketchbook and hurts Jonathan, she finds her car vandalized, and while cleaning it, you guessed it, she's killed by Art. When Jonathan returns home, he finds his mother's corpse and Art chases after him before drugging and kidnapping him, stealing Sienna's sword in the process. As Art's killing spree unfolds, the film becomes a gruesome ballet of brutality. The sword, a gift from Sienna's deceased father, becomes a focal point of both horror and hope, a macabre talisman that transcends the boundary between life and death. So, we've got the whole film. We know how it is. This film got to the point where one of the producers had to take to Twitter to issue a warning about graphic violence and brutal depictions of horror. So watch at your own risk, and by the way, there's a third installment coming next year. You'll never catch me watching all three, but do with that as you will. Number 2, anything from Lucifer Valentine. Okie dokie folks, if you have emetophilia, skip ahead now, you're not gonna break my heart. We're good? Alright. So this director would be the man who created vomit gore as a genre of film, and just the thought of that has me trying my darndest not to retch. He's responsible for the aptly named Vomit Gore Trilogy, 3 American-Canadian surreal psychological horror films which follow a non-linear narrative that centers around young runaway Angela Aberdeen, I love alliteration, a stripper that suffers from bulimia. The trilogy focuses primarily on situations involving vomiting, people eating, graphic violence, gore, torment, and more. In order, they're titled Slaughtered Vomit Dolls, Regurgitated Sacrifice, and Slow Torture Puke Chamber. Yeah, we're moving on before I also upchuck. You'll never catch me watching those, even if I love dolls. Number 1, The Human Centipede. Was there any other option to end today's list with? It's a 2009 Dutch independent body horror film written, directed, and co-produced by Tom Six. The film concerns a deranged German surgeon who kidnaps 3 tourists and conjoins them surgically, mouth to anus, forming the Human Centipede. According to the director, the concept arose from a joke he had made with friends about punishing a heinous criminal by stitching his mouth to the anus of a fat truck driver. Other sources of inspiration were Yahtzee medical experiments performed during World War II, such as those performed by Joseph Mengele, something we've talked about extensively on here. The director didn't mention the premise of the film for fear of putting off potential backers. I wonder why. Those who did finance the film didn't discover the full nature of it until completion. During promotion for The Human Centipede, press materials claimed that the film was 100% medically accurate, which I don't know how they can do that. During its festival run, the director remarked on how many audiences reacted strongly to the film, sometimes almost vomiting in the cinema aisles, and quite a few folks running out. Rotten Tomatoes gave the film a 49% approval rating based on 97 reviews, with an average rating of 5.15 out of 10. The general consensus states, grotesque, visceral, and hard to swallow. This surgical horror doesn't quite earn its stripes because the gross outs overwhelm and devalue everything else. I've never been able to bring myself to watch it, so let me know in the comments if you have.
Number 5. Phoenix Forgotten. Phoenix Forgotten is a 2017 American found footage sci-fi horror directed by Justin Barber in his directorial debut and written by him and T.S. Nolan. Produced by Ridley Scott, the Ridley Scott. The film tells the story of the disappearance of 3 teenagers who set out to find the source of a widely reported 1997 UFO phenomenon known famously as, you guessed it, the Phoenix Lights. We all remember this, don't we? Okay, now the plot. Sophie Bishop and her boyfriend visit Sophie's parents' place in Phoenix, Arizona on the 20th anniversary of her brother's disappearance. In 1997, the family all witnessed the Phoenix Lights during Sophie's 6th birthday, which was, drumroll please, recorded. Several strange lights appear in a formation over the city before being chased by fighter jets. The family is convinced that they have witnessed UFOs via the old recordings, and Sophie now begins to dig a little bit deeper. In the tapes, Sophie's brother Josh begins investigating the Phoenix Lights with the help of his friends Ashley and Mark. Sophie interviews multiple parties regarding the trio's disappearance and the sightings in '97, only to find the group's abandoned car and a camera and one single tape. Sophie views the tape, obviously, showing the beginning of the group's epic journey to find out what caused the Phoenix Lights. We then see what eventually ensues of the poor trio in a horror movie about aliens. Yeah, shocker, right? Or who knows, maybe it has a happy ending. I like this movie a lot for obvious reasons, but it's like really fun, and I like the dated feel with the tapes, you know? As always, dudes, if you like what we do here at Top 5 Scary, throw us a thumbs up down below or even leave us a comment, you know? Number 4, Antrum. Antrum is supposed to be the deadliest movie ever made, and that's what it claims. It's like a fever dream, this movie. Again, not real, but supposedly real. You know, it's a movie. Antrum is proudly a 2018 Canadian horror film. Woo! Go Canada. Written and directed by David Amito and Michael Lacini, the film is divided into 2 parts, an opening and a closing narrative in the form of a mockumentary and a feature film. The mockumentary loosely tells the story of Antrum, a movie released in the late 70s that supposedly had effects on those who watched it. The bulk of the movie then is just kinda moment to moment what kinda happened. Antrum was developed by Amito and Lacini during the development of a separate project in which they were brainstorming scenarios that scared them. Their central idea would later become the basis of Antrum. This idea and concept of what it would be like to watch a supposed, quote, real cursed film. The filmmakers felt like it would make a great horror film, which it does. For the film's occult aspects, the writers studied multiple historical depictions of demons and the devil. It stars Nicole Tompkins and child actor Rowan Smith. Antrum made its world premiere at the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival in October 2018 and was nominated for several awards festival to festival. Uncorked Entertainment acquired North American distribution rights, releasing it on video on demand and pretty well all streaming services since like 2019. It received great reviews who praised its uncomfortable atmosphere, its uncomfortable acting, and creativity. Yeah, they kind of nailed it with this one. It's so 70s. Like, it feels like, again, a fevered night terror. Number 2, The Taking of Deborah Logan. It's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, I'm not gonna lie. This movie is horrifying. If you're down for like old witchy ghost lady vibes on a Friday night, and you like jump scares, we got a winner, folks. A 2014 gem. This American found footage supernatural horror film is a first for the director Adam Robidoux, who co-wrote the screenplay. Set in Virginia, it tells the story of a documentary crew making a film about Alzheimer's patients who uncover something sinister while documenting one woman. The film was released right around Halloween time, and you can still catch this on like every streaming service. A team of students who want to create a documentary about Deborah Logan, an elderly woman who has Alzheimer's, films and records her daily life. Then Deb starts to act a little bizarre. They notice that her actions defy normal explanations and express something a little bit more supernatural. Things escalate after they record an audio of Deborah talking about sacrifices and snakes. Oh yeah, like real witchy old lady vibes, I'm telling you. After some talk about an ancient ritual that makes people immortal, some dark cultist kind of stuff, and voila, Deb goes on a spree and tries to kidnap them all. They find out that she has quite the sinister history and that maybe she's not a really good fit for the star of a documentary, more like the star of an exorcism.
Number 5, The Lighthouse. From visionary director Robert Eggers comes The Lighthouse, a harrowing fable that teaches us the importance of respecting personal boundaries and respecting seabirds. Eggers is one of my favorite modern horror directors, whose work sits a cut above the most usual horror fare with The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman, which isn't quite horror unless you're terrified of Norway. The Lighthouse is unlike any other scary movies you've seen. Actually, it's probably unlike most movies you've seen. It's kind of hard to define The Lighthouse under one genre. It's unsettling and definitely makes me feel all heebly-jeebly watching it, but it isn't horror in the traditional sense. There's no monsters or slashers, just 2 men, a lighthouse, a whole lot of seagulls, and enough cabin fever-induced madness to shake a lobster at. A rookie lighthouse keeper, played by Robert Pattinson, is assigned to keep a lighthouse on a small isolated island off the coast of New England, under the supervision of the island's crusty old master, Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson are some of the best working actors out there right now, and the 2 of these titans absolutely show up for this, carrying this 2-headed character piece on their backs and speaking in some of the most hilariously memorable accents ever put to film. Seriously, Willem Dafoe's old nautical piratical accent in this thing needs to be taught in acting schools. I would do an impression, but I won't do it justice. The film is shot beautifully, the whole thing seeming like a mix between a bad dream and an avant-garde theater production, leaving you asking the entire time if anything you're seeing can be trusted, if any of it's even happening, or if the whole thing is all just one twisted nightmare between 2 very lonely, isolated men. Now, I can't say for sure if they went nuts because they weren't subscribed to Top 5 Scary, but I'm willing to bet that a little bit of entertainment from the best scary videos channel on the web might have helped some of that madness. So subscribe, maybe. Number 4, Annihilation. I've talked a bit about Annihilation before on this channel, and I will continue to do so until Annihilation gets the respect it deserves. That's my mission. I've never forgiven the movie-going populace for not seeing this one in theaters. Annihilation came to us from director and writer Alex Garland, who also gave us Ex Machina, a fantastic movie about having a crush on a robot. Annihilation is a cosmic horror story detailing the effects of an after an asteroid crashes to Earth, and a mysterious alien presence known as the Shimmer begins to manifest across a quarantine zone in a forest outside an army base. Everything the Shimmer touches starts to blend together. Biological life merging, double helixes swirling in a big cosmic gumbo. The film is hauntingly beautiful as it is terrifying. Our protagonist Lena, played by Natalie Portman, is a US Army veteran who lost her husband in an unrelated combat mission. One day he shows up on her doorstep, convulsing violently, leading Lena towards the Shimmer. Learning her husband was involved, she ventures forward with a group of fellow researchers and soldiers to uncover what lies at the heart of the Shimmer, what's causing it, and if it can be stopped. The film is a visual treat with its lush vistas and uniquely terrifying monster designs. I've talked about Annihilation Bear before, and I will take any opportunity to talk about Annihilation Bear. I love Annihilation Bear. Slap a photo of him back there for me. Annihilation is the perfect kind of horror movie, simultaneously exploring complex themes of depression, grief, humanity's inherent nature and propensity towards self-destructive behavior, but it also asks even bigger questions like, wouldn't it be really yucky if a bear had a human skull inside its head that screamed like a dying human while it was roaring? Get you a horror movie that can do both, okay? Number 3, Jacob's Ladder. While the first 2 entries on our list were pretty recent and well received, I want to throw it back a couple decades for our next entry and highlight a cult classic that could always use a little bit more love. Jacob's Ladder details the story of Jacob Singer, a Vietnam veteran who 4 years later, after returning home from the war, struggles to readjust to his normal life. Not helping matters much, no doubt, is the fact that Jacob keeps seeing horrifying monstrosities surrounding him every day. It seems as if since he's come home, nothing has ever been the same. The film shows us life through Jacob's tormented eyes. As he tries to navigate through healing and overcoming his personal demons, he is constantly haunted by real-life demons that seem to have a very vested interest in him. Matters only serve to get a lot more confusing when Jacob learns that other members of his platoon, back from his army days, have all been suffering similar things, reporting seeing the same monsters and being haunted. Desperate to find the truth, Jacob seeks out the cause of what's happening to him and his old friends, and ends up descending down a path of madness, learning things no man ever should. Worth noting is just how influential Jacob's Ladder is, serving as one of the direct inspirations for the legendary Silent Hill series of games, with Silent Hill 2 in particular taking major inspiration from the film's plotline, monsters, twists, right down to the protagonists even wearing the exact same outfit as a little homage. Jacob's Ladder is a little older than some of the other entries on this list. It is absolutely worth a watch and still worth your time. A great performance out of Tim Robbins and one of the most wild twist-ending horror movies ever had. A bunch have tried to copy this. I'm sure you've seen a million hack writers copy it, but no one did it as cool as when Jacob's Ladder did it, so there. And actually thinking about it, I shouldn't even mention a twist, so there was no twist. Everything in Jacob's Ladder happens very literally. Go into it knowing that, okay? Number 2, Sinister. Moving. It's always stressful, isn't it? It's a huge pain. Well, Sinister is a 2012 horror film about an everyday family moving houses and all the trials and tribulations that come with that, like having to update your postal code on your information, unpacking your stuff and figuring out where all your art books are gonna go, and finding out that you moved into a house where a series of grisly rituals happened, sacrificing the previous family who lived here, and it's all been filmed and kept in a box upstairs in the attic. You know, just regular stuff the kids go through all the time. A struggling true crime novelist is trying to chase his glory days and intentionally moves into a house he knows where ghastly deaths took place in order to get close to the story so he can better research it and write a bestseller. He discovers a box in the attic full of film of all of the crimes and becomes obsessed with uncovering and exposing what happened, mostly so he can make a quick buck and get himself back on top again and make the late night circuit. As his obsession grows, it starts to affect his family and children in concerning ways, as everyone in the family starts acting stranger, having visions, hallucinations, and psychotic episodes, leaving you wondering if there is something much, much deeper going on in this house beyond a floundering author chasing a bestseller. Now, if you haven't seen this one, it's definitely worth going into this one as blind as you possibly can, because the twists and turns totally make this one. I spent the entire runtime of this propped up on the edge of the couch, my heart pounding, hoping that everything would turn out to be totally okay, even though I knew better. It's a horror movie, things never go great. The movie's got a stellar sense of dread that refuses to let go once it starts and only lets you breathe out once the credits roll, and even then, not for very long. Fantastic performances across the board, but a special shout out goes to Ethan Hawke, who makes this thing. Number 1, Hereditary. Now, there are a ton of movies that could easily have taken the number 1 spot here, and I thought pretty hard about making The Shining number 1, since, you know, it's kind of a classic, but I figured a lot of people have talked about The Shining, and then I remembered the experience of seeing Hereditary in a movie theater, and how it was the only time in my life I've ever seriously thought about leaving a movie theater because I thought I was gonna throw up on the seats. I was so scared and uncomfortable. Hereditary is a 2018 horror movie from visionary Ari Aster, who also gave us the psychological horror movie masterpiece Midsommar, so Aster really just bangs out the hits. Hereditary is about as peak A24 horror movie as it gets. One of those ones where the monster is really a metaphor for generational trauma and all that. After the grand matriarch of a Midwestern family passes away, her daughter and grandkids begin to uncover the cryptic and terrifying truth behind their ancestry, trying desperately to escape the sinister legacy they've inadvertently inherited. This movie is terrifying in the worst of ways. It's not just jump scares or tons of blood. No. This is elevated horror. This is not your usual horror story. It really zeroes in on the way too close to home horror of watching a family break apart. It is gut-wrenchingly painful to watch, preying on really specific kind of fears. It's gonna get its hooks in you and have your teeth grinding for the full 2 hours runtime and for ages afterwards. If you've seen this, I dare you to look at a pigeon, a stop sign, cheese wire, or a treehouse ever the same after this movie. And staggering performances. Toni Collette goes for absolute gold and delivers one of the best performances I've ever seen in a horror movie, full stop. She needs an Oscar for most upsetting crying I have ever heard in a film, which is a category she would have no competition in. Hereditary might not be the goriest film or even the scariest movie I've ever seen or most upsetting. There's a bunch of Takashi Miike or Park Chan-wook films that would probably take that. But Hereditary is definitely one of the most viscerally scary movies I've ever seen. The kind that just sits in your gut and makes you think about it all day, like you were living through an actual nightmare. Watch only if you're truly brave. I know I made it sound absolutely horrible, but it is a great movie. Just don't be surprised if you don't sleep that night. Number 5, Renfield. I feel like this is the rare movie where I honestly don't need to see a single trailer or even hear a single fact or tidbit of trivia to know I want to see it other than one piece of information. Nicolas Cage plays Dracula in this movie. Okay, moving on. We're gonna go on to number 4. No, okay, I'll actually fill it out a bit. We'll talk about Renfield just a little bit. As if you need anything more than Nicolas Cage plays Dracula. Renfield is an upcoming horror comedy featuring the immortal Count Dracula, and I think he's played by, I don't know, some like B-movie actor or something, and his humble manservant Renfield, who's been indebted to Dracula for centuries and is growing more than a bit weary of it. The two of them find themselves in modern Louisiana, a far cry away from the Romanian castles the Count is used to, and trouble arises when his servant finds himself falling in love with a police officer and comedy ensues. Interestingly, this script was inspired by a pitch from Robert Kirkman. You probably know him as the creator of The Walking Dead and Invincible, and was adapted into a screenplay. Kirkman isn't particularly known for his comedy, he's definitely known for his violence and gore, so it's a bit of a step outside his comfort zone. Alongside Nicolas Cage in the starring role is an all-star cast of actors. Nicholas Hoult from Mad Max, X-Men, The Menu is playing the eponymous Renfield. Awkwafina is the police officer he finds himself smitten with, and we got Parks and Rec alum and Sonic the Hedgehog voice actor Ben Schwartz as a mob. Nicolas Cage in comedies is some of his best. The unbearable weight of massive talent was a real surprise hit for me. Definitely go see that. Nick Cage plays himself, it's fantastic. And if you've somehow done yourself the utter disservice of never having seen vampires kiss, I implore you, please go get that done. Since Nick Cage plays a vampire in that, and it's absolutely hilarious. It's one of the most insane performances he's ever given. Renfield is set to drop in April, and you can absolutely believe I will be there front row day one. And if you're looking for more scary movie content, true tales of terror, fake fibs of frights, ghouls, goblins, aliens, cryptids, and everything freaky under the sun and above it, well, have I got something for you. Is this playlist on Top 5 Scary? Click through, stay scared, but most importantly, stay subscribed, because we're trying to get those numbers up. Now let's keep going. Number 4, Scream 6. It's always someone you know. Although Sidney Prescott managed to finally shake Woodsboro's most infamous resident, it seems that the ghost face can't be put down just that easily. Scream 6 is a big departure for the franchise, taking place in New York instead of a small Californian town, and may I just say it's high time. You know, slashers have been acting like they're too good to make movie sequels about their bad guys going to space or going to New York anymore. Jason did it, and I guess we just decided it just wasn't vogue anymore, but hogwash, I love seeing Ghostface running around the Big Apple. Ghostface on the subway. He's not supposed to be there. What are you doing there, man? The torch of Final Girl has been passed from Sidney Prescott to Tara Carpenter, introduced in the previous film and played by everybody's favorite goth girl, Jenna Ortega. Some other reprising roles include Hayden Panettiere coming back to play Kirby, a fan favorite character from Scream 4 whose death kind of left a bad taste in all of our mouths. so seeing her come back is actually super cool. There was a little Easter egg that confirmed she was alive in Scream 5, so I'm very excited to see her come back. I am a huge Scream fan if that is not coming across. We're also going to see Scream 5's protagonist Sam Carpenter return, and series mainstay Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers. No word on how horrifying her haircut's going to be. It would be a strange Scream film if it didn't have at least one cast member. Losing Neve Campbell and David Arquette definitely hurts, so one legacy member is more than enough. It's being directed by a duo of Tyler Gillett and Matt Bettinelli-Olpin, who worked together to make the last Scream movie, which honestly I thought was pretty good. I know some people had some issues with it, but I really liked it. They also made Ready or Not and had previously collaborated on the horror anthology series VHS. I'm personally super excited for Scream. Of all the slasher franchises out there, and I might land myself in some hot water with this hot take, but I think Scream is the most consistent. I think all of the Scream movies are pretty good. Even the worst Scream movie, Scream 3, is still like leagues better than most of the Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. I just love Ghostface. I love that little goof. Although the loss of Wes Craven is definitely felt deeply, the previous film left me as a fan feeling like the series was being taken care of. The meta commentary was top notch, the scares were blood curdling, and there was a good amount of that Scream humor. I cannot wait to find out who's under that mask come March. Number 3, Evil Dead Rise. Groovy. Evil Dead has always been one of my absolute favorite horror movies ever. I love a horror comedy. If you couldn't tell already from my passion for Scream and my excitement for Renfield, and no one has ever done it better than Evil Dead 2, which might genuinely be one of my favorite movies of all time, let alone horror movies. I've probably seen that like 30 or so times. For all the quips, chainsaw arms, time travel, boomsticks, and gallons of fake blood, it's easy to forget that originally Evil Dead started as a low-budget horror movie trying to shock you to sickness with its gore and scares, and was trying to take itself a little bit seriously. The franchise tried to reboot itself about a decade ago, simply titled Evil Dead, hoping to recapture that same feeling of terror and a bunch of teens lost in a cabin. In a departure for the movies, Ash Williams and his chainsaw was nowhere to be found, and the comedy was completely absent unless you consider someone sawing their arm off with a bread cutter hilarious. And if you do, I don't really want to watch any like comedies with you. Well, Rise is set to try one more time at capturing that original gore fest. It seems like it's disconnected from the 80s films and the 2013 reboot and is doing its own thing. Evil Dead Rise sees a pair of estranged sisters reuniting in a cramped Los Angeles apartment, and their reunion is cut short after discovering a flesh-bound book, one Necronomicon Ex Mortis, in the sisters' building, which, well, if you know anything about Evil Dead, you know reading that book is very bad news and pretty much a guarantee that you're going to invite an army of flesh-eating demons into your world. If the trailer is anything to go by, expect Evil Dead Rise to be packed to bursting with gross-out gore, high-octane scares, and not a whole lot of one-liners. Bruce Campbell has an EP credit on this, but he's leaving the boomstick behind for this one. 3 seasons of Ash vs. the Evil Dead was more than enough for him and more than enough for me, so I'm just excited to see some new Evil Dead content regardless. The trailer was super promising and already had me scared, and if they can do that on a video I'm watching on my phone, I cannot even imagine how much popcorn I'm going to be flinging around the theater when I see this in April. Number 2, Saw X. Saw 10. Saw X? Saw 10. Well, we'll decide. I don't know what they want to call it. The games never end. So long as the sun still sets, they will continue making Saw movies. Death, taxes, they're gonna keep making Saw movies. Those are certainties of the world. There's always more inventive ways to show horrific dismemberments and really stretch the definition of what a game is. The franchise has been spinning its wheels for a little bit, with most fans agreeing that there hasn't been a truly great Saw movie in years. Saw 7, The Final Chapter, Jigsaw, and Spiral were all pretty weak entries that disappointed longtime fans. Saw The Final Chapter, ain't that ironic? We were all hoping to see a little bit more of John Kramer, less convoluted plot twists and retcons, and more of what Saw's all about, chaining people to radiators who probably didn't deserve that much torment. While Spiral seemed like a step in the right direction, it did underperform dramatically and wasn't exactly the reboot worthy of saving the series. So longtime Saw collaborators Kevin Grutart and Josh Stolberg came together to pen and direct a script for Saw X. Saw 10. At this time, very little is known about the 10th entry in the splattering series, other than that Tobin Bell, best known for his role as John Kramer and that funny little puppet, will be returning with a main character role. So we can expect lots of Kramer goodness, lots of pre-recorded messages about how much blood victims are going to have to shed to learn important life lessons. Exciting too is Shawnee Smith, who plays Amanda Young, Jigsaw's troubled apprentice from the first 3 Saw movies, is set to return as well. And reports say that it's going to take place at some point during the first first and second film, which makes sense since, spoiler alert from a movie from 2004, Jigsaw dies in the third one, so, wasn't a lot to do there. He's capable of a lot of things, but bringing himself back from the dead he hasn't quite nailed yet. Do I think Saw 10 is gonna be the best movie ever? Probably not, who's to say, but I absolutely love the Saw series, bones and all, pun intended, for all its ridiculous soap opera level twists, secret apprentices, and just utterly insane death trap, and of course, that little puppet. So I'm excited to spend any time at all in that dirty bathroom one more time. Number 1, Five Nights at Freddy's. Yeah, no, I'm being serious. I'm including this on the list because you know what? I'm genuinely looking forward to it. If you're unfamiliar with the IP somehow, Five Nights at Freddy's is a series of video games about a haunted pizzeria populated by an animatronic cartoon band who's a lot more lively than their stilted animations will suggest. They come to life at night and have a real hunger for just about anything that isn't animatronic. Now the series gets unbelievably complicated, so I'll let someone else more knowledgeable than me explain that. If you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, head on over to Top 10 Gaming. They do so much Five Nights stuff, you'll have stuff to watch for years. The mega popular smash hit indie game franchise blew up pretty much overnight. Going from one developer's passion project, a short half-hour scary point-and-click game, became a media empire, spanning 9 games, not including spin-offs, a series of novels and comic books, and a movie that's been in production hell since 2015. The Five Nights movie has passed from multiple creators and teams, and for ages, it seemed like it was never gonna actually materialize and just existed as a sort of vague tease. But as of 2023 though, we have found a team, we've found a script, and we've got some concrete evidence it exists. It's being actively filmed, and it's starring Josh Hutcherson as the doomed security guard, and horror icon Matthew Lillard, famous for playing Shaggy in Scooby-Doo, and the original Ghostface, spoilers, will be playing the villainous owner of the Fazbear franchise. Early reports too said the animatronics in the film will be all practical effects, which if done right will be premium unleaded nightmare fuel. I am a sucker for a practical effect in a horror movie. All bets are on for the Five Nights movie to be a pretty big hit. Jason Blum, the head of Blumhouse, is producing, and Matt Lillard has already agreed to do a trilogy of Five Nights at Freddy's movies. So watch this space when we do top 5 horror movies for 2024, and I mentioned Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in the number 1 spot.
Number 5, Fresh. I decided to start this list off light, so obviously a movie about a human meat business. Fresh. The movie opens up to Noah on a date with a seriously insufferable man, like the thin scarf and everything. Noah later meets a guy at a grocery store, Steve, and they hit it off immediately. Ironically, there's actually a fresh meat sign hanging right over the scene, which, it's not funny, but it kind of is. Anyway, the two end up going on a date where the pair get to know about each other. Family, friends, connections, people who would go searching for her, date topics. The pair strike up a fast and intense romance, and in just a couple of days, Steve invites Noah on a vacation to a surprise location. Noah hesitantly agrees, and they leave. Noah only tells her close friend that she's going, but Noah doesn't even have an address to give her because, hey, it's a surprise. Steve and Noah drive for hours. Noah notices how far they're going, but doesn't mention any discomfort. In fact, she even gets an address to where they're going, which she tells her friend. Steve tells her that they're going to stop at his house for the night and finish the drive in the morning. They arrive at Steve's desolate modern house, where Steve pours Noah a drink. Noah asks for the Wi-Fi, saying there's still no service, and Steve answers, "It must have gone out again." What? That wasn't the question, sir. He asks Noah to guess the flavors of her drink, which we all know is to get her to drink more of the spiked drink, and she ends up passing out. She wakes up in a large room, chained to a bed on the floor. Steve explains to her that his job is to kidnap women, do surgery on them to remove pieces of their flesh, and then to sell the meat to paying customers. Obviously, the lives of the women are then ended, and they slowly dwindle away into nothingness. Noah is able to speak to another woman that is there and discusses how long they've been there. But it's also revealed that Steve has an affinity for Noah, much like another woman who had written secret notes in magazines provided by Steve. Steve takes her out of her room for specially prepared meals which contained, you guessed it, human flesh. Back in the city, Noah's friend begins investigating her disappearance, eventually stumbling upon Steve's home in the city. There it is found out that he has a wife, who's missing a leg, who helps him with the business. Noah is able to build trust between her and Steve, and eventually he lets his guard down enough for her to make a move towards escaping. She ends up biting off his before running out onto the property. Noah's friend is able to find the house, and Steve's wife begins to hunt Noah down, but is unsuccessful. Steve and his wife end up passing, and Noah frees herself and the other girl there. God, I'm never going on a first date again. Number 4, Climax. This is by far one of the strangest yet most captivating movies I have ever had the pleasure to watch. It follows a dance group in France who are having a rehearsal and party before a performance. But about 30 minutes into the movie, everyone begins acting strange, and it's revealed that somebody spiked the punch with LSD. The movie opens with a myriad of interviews, introducing many characters and their reason for dancing. Then the movie shows the rehearsal and party, and then people started to realize that they were all acting weird, like tripping weird. I mean, people reacted as expected. Some people attempted to leave, only to find out the doors were locked. Some people began to have fun, while others were freaking out. Chaos seriously ensues. People are crying and screaming, amidst others who were dancing and enjoying their time profusely. One girl is set on fire. A young person whose mother danced there locked themselves in a bathroom and got electrocuted. Relationships began and ended, while others began to sleep with each other. Even, I'm not gonna say it directly, but a brother and a sister were in this movie. The group begins to turn on each other, accusing people of spiking the punch, but no one is ever able to come to a conclusion. Their attention spans aren't very long. The movie continues to pan around the building, showing the interactions everyone is having with themselves, the people around them, and the new hidden world that only they can see. Eventually, the group came down and saw that it was morning. They also found the previously locked door unlocked. The entire film is filled to the brim with amazing camera shots, acting, and dance sequences. It is truly a piece of artwork. Disturbing artwork, but artwork. The film's very last scene is a girl dropping liquid LSD into her eye. I'm not going to tell you who it is because the mystery of not knowing who it is creates such amazing suspense as you watch the movie. Number 3, Troll 2. Okay. I couldn't help myself. I had to add this movie in. Although it's not disturbing in the traditional horror sense, the acting, effects, and dialogue are surely enough to leave a viewer unsettled and confused. It has time control, teleportation, magic, an erotic popcorn scene, and as my mother put it, the whole movie seems as though it was directed by a 5-year-old and written by a 4-year-old. Troll 2 was made in 1990, but it seems like it was made in the 60s. I have never watched a horror movie that elicited such frustration yet amazement into my very core. The movie follows a family who decide to take an exchange vacation to Nilbog, a small desolate town. Upon arriving, the family realizes that its residents aren't what they first seemed to be. Yes, they did seem to be inhuman to the viewer, but somehow the family was blissfully unaware. The son, Joshua, keeps seeing his recently deceased grandfather, who everybody constantly calls Grandpa Seth. Yes, everyone. Grandpa Seth loves to tell Joshua stories of goblins. The sister, I honestly don't remember her name, is in I don't know if I can call it a relationship with a boy. She's upset that the boy has friends, and she also mentions that her family hates him. But 2 seconds later, she invites him to go on their vacation, saying that her family would be fine with it. I know, it doesn't make sense. The boyfriend decides to take an RV with all of his friends to Nilbog, meeting the family there. In the car, a weird dream sequence occurs. Josh sees Grandpa Seth on the side of the road, and for some reason, his parents stop the car and allow him to run up to the man. It is then revealed that the man is just a random decrepit man, and only Joshua saw him as Grandpa Seth, and the family gently ask him to return to the car. No sense of concern whatsoever for their young child who is running up to a strange man on the side of the highway. Upon arriving in Nilbog, the family is greeted by the owners of the house they will be staying in, and oh my god. I don't even know how to explain the interaction besides, no, I actually have no words. They enter the house and there is a feast laid out for them, but Joshua's Grandpa Seth appears outside a window and tells him that he can't let his family eat the food, which is covered in a green oozing liquid. So Grandpa Seth freezes time, and Joshua comes up with a great idea to stop his family from eating the food. He pees on the table. Yes. That was actually the only thing he could come up with to prevent his family from eating. While he was frozen in time, peeing on the table. And no, nobody questions how he seemingly teleported from the window to standing on top of the table. Instead, they lock him in his room. It turns out that the people in the town are actually all goblins. And guys, Nilbog is goblin backwards. What? They're trying to turn humans into plants so that they can eat them. The entire movie is just filled with the town residents trying to get the families to eat. Also, Grandpa Seth dies like 5 times in the movie and then he just keeps coming back. He also goes to hell for a second. The boys' friends turn into trees from the Goblin Queen, and there's a lot of scenes with people flailing at a slightly increased speed in one direction. Some may try to call it running, but no. These people were not running. I'm not sure what they were doing. The goblins also looked like they were played by slow-moving children. In fact, the costumes also looked like they were made by children. You know what? The whole movie seems to have been made by children, and not impressive film prodigy children, like preschool children who are progressing as they're supposed to. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. I honestly could do a whole video on this, but I'm aware that we're not talking about horribly fantastic horror movies today, so I'll get back to the list. I really beg of you to please watch Troll 2. No, there's zero storyline connection to Troll. And in fact, there actually aren't any trolls in the movie, but please watch it because I could easily do an entire video just talking about Troll 2, and I would love for you guys to really understand what I'm talking about. Number 2, Flowers in the Attic. Okay, so I haven't actually watched this movie, but I have read the book. And the fact that it was made into a movie is upsetting to say the least. This movie includes the imprisonment of young siblings for years and eventually leads to, a twisted attraction forming. The plot begins with a family's father passing away in a car accident. After a couple of weeks, the mother tells her 4 children that they will be moving in with her very rich but estranged parents, and that they would be leaving immediately with only 4 suitcases. Upon arrival, the children are greeted by their grandmother, who is a tall, sophisticated, and stern-looking woman. She leads them in through a darkened back entrance up to a small room. The mother tells the group of children that they will be staying in the room until their grandfather forgives her for marrying her half-uncle. Yes, I'm glazing over that, but once she and her father make amends, she will introduce all of the children and they will live lavishly in the grand mansion forever. The children were required to stay quiet, but they were able to play in the large attic that was attached to the room, and they would be brought food once a day. But things aren't as they seem. The group would end up staying in the attic for over 3 years. The oldest 2, Chris and Kathy, took care of their younger siblings and attempted to bring joy and learning into their imprisonment. They would decorate the attic. Chris and Kathy's relationship developed into, I'm not going to say it, but I'm sure you can figure out what I'm not saying. Chris and Kathy first left the room with permission from their mother to watch a lavish holiday party that was taking place at the mansion. The next time they left the room was 3 years later, when they scaled down the side of the house and swam in a nearby pond. After years of their mother lying to them, they found out that her father had passed away years before, but wouldn't let them out of the room because of a clause in the inheritance she had received from her father. If it was revealed that she'd birthed children from her late husband, she would have to forfeit all of her money. Honestly, I'm kind of siding with the grandfather on this one. So, when the group figures that their mother never plans to release them, they decide to escape. In preparation for their escape, Chris and Kathy created a copy of a key left in the room at night to steal money from their mother. Most of the children do manage to escape, and this leads into the 8-book series. Yes, there are 8 of these books. I would love to say that I wouldn't recommend them, but the writing is actually really good. Number 1, Human Centipede. Yeah, I know everyone is expecting Human Centipede, but that's just because it's Human Centipede. It's so upsetting, it's so disgusting. I don't even want to talk about it. You know what? No, I refuse. I'm changing my mind. I'm not gonna talk about it, and honestly, I don't even think I can on this channel. Number 1.5, Creep. Yeah, this movie is disturbing. Never have I ever watched a movie that left me with such a disgusted, sinking feeling. Creep follows an amateur filmmaker, Aaron, who was hired to film a documentary for a man who is dying of a terminal illness and wanted to leave something behind for his son. Aaron drove out to a secluded house in the woods to meet Joseph, the man, and Joseph starts off his documentary strong. He asks Aaron to film him in the bathtub, scrub-a-dubbing and speaking of how sad he is that he will never meet his son. Then Aaron is scared by a realistic wolf mask, which Joseph tells him is named Peach Fuzz. Yes, Aaron stays. Then the pair go on a walk through the woods, alone, and Joseph keeps sneaking up and scaring Aaron. But it kinda seems like Aaron is warming up to Joseph. Joseph claims he just has a weird sense of humor. The two go to a diner and share a dinner that quickly turns very strange. Yes, even stranger. Joseph confesses that he had taken photos of Aaron before they had met, and that he had an animal within who is ready to kill. Back at the house, Aaron is ready to leave, but Joseph asks him to stay for a drink, and yeah, Aaron ends up staying. I know. To have a drink drink, and Joseph shares some incredibly disturbing information with Aaron regarding his peach fuzz mask and his wife. Aaron puts something in Joseph's drink, takes his phone, and decides to call Joseph's wife in a hiding spot. Aaron is told that she is not his wife, she's his sister, and that Joseph does not have a terminal illness, and he doesn't have a son. She wants him to leave immediately. Freaked out, Aaron headed to leave, but when he exited his hiding place, Joseph was nowhere to be seen. Aaron, for some reason, looks around the house, like on the patio. Then Joseph sneaks up and scares Aaron, then says that he doesn't want to die, before running off. Aaron walks down the stairs to leave and finds Joseph wearing his peach fuzz mask and gyrating against the door. Aaron charges towards him, and then the camera cuts. We next see Aaron back at home complaining about receiving mailed gifts and videos from Joseph. Joseph sent Aaron a video of him burying large garbage bags in his yard. He sent a box containing a stuffed bear and a blade, or a stuffed wolf and a blade, and finally another video of Joseph apologizing for the first video. Aaron ripped open the wolf and he found a locket with both of their pictures inside of it. He throws everything away. The police provide no help or surveillance. One night, Aaron hears someone rummaging through the trash, and the viewers see Joseph standing at the front door. Another night, Joseph sneaks into Aaron's house and films Aaron while he sleeps. Soon after, Aaron finds another video of Joseph where Joseph explains how he found the locket in the garbage and how he wants Aaron to meet him by the lake for closure. You're probably thinking, of course Aaron won't go. No, he goes. He sets up his camera on and sits on a bench facing the water. Then, in his peach fuzz mask, Joseph comes up behind Aaron and ends his life with an axe. The movie closes with Joseph placing a tape labeled Aaron with a little heart on a shelf full of tapes just like it. He's heard on the phone introducing himself as Bill, requesting the exact same services that he had requested from Aaron. And yes, there is a creep too.
In at number 5 we have The Descent, 2005. First up we have The Descent, a British film from 2005 about a caving exhibition. We follow a group of 7 women exploring a cave that's never been explored before. The only way out of the cave is through it, so they travel deeper and deeper until they're trapped deep underground. We watch as one by one they meet a horrible fate, some accidental climbing mistakes, others descending into madness. They soon find out they are not alone in the cave and are being pursued by terrifying hordes of crawlers, but what we might today call Wendigo. They are a race of cave-dwelling humanoids who have adapted to near constant darkness and lost any previous trace of humanity they may have had, becoming monsters in the process. The girls start to turn on each other while they struggle to survive in the darkness. They created 2 different endings for this film after deciding that the British ending was too dark for the US audience. In the US ending, our main character wakes up in the cave and crawls to the surface back to her car. When she is driving away, she pulls over and vomits, and when she leans back in the car, she is startled by the ghost of Juno sitting in the passenger seat. However, in the British version, they reveal that this was all a trick of her mind, and she wakes up back in the cave, having never escaped at all. The film ends with the screams of the crawlers getting louder as they surround her. This one is enough to make anyone scared of the dark. Coming in at number 4 we have Ringu, 1998, aka The Ring. We have all heard about the adaptation of The Ring, but have you seen the original, more horrifying one, Ringu? The story follows a reporter and her ex-husband as they investigate the sudden death of her niece, who died of a sudden heart failure with an unnaturally horrified expression on her face. She then finds out that her niece recently visited a cabin with her friends. Each of them had died the exact same way on the exact same night. She visits the cabin to find out what could have caused them all to die so suddenly when she finds the unlabeled tape. After watching the tape, she understands that they had all been cursed as she was now. Things become more tense when Reiku's young son watches the tape, starting the 1-week countdown before he too dies. She has to break the curse or she and everyone she cares about will die in less than a week. Their discovery takes them to a volcanic island where they can discover that the video has a connection to a psychic who died 30 years ago and her child. In the end, they discover that the only way to break the curse is to copy it and show it to someone else, passing it on to them, dooming them instead of you. It's a good thing no one has a VHS player anymore. In at number 3 we have A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. This one is sure to keep you up at night. A Nightmare on Elm Street follows a group of teenagers battling a killer who attacks in their dreams. We follow Nancy and her friends trying to figure out why they're being hunted and how to stop it. This was our first introduction to the infamous Freddy Krueger, a killer who is badly burned all over his body. He uses a gloved hand with razors to kill his victims. Nowadays we all know who Freddy Krueger is, but in 1984 a killer who hunts you in your dreams was truly terrifying. Nancy has to struggle to stay awake throughout the filmmaking, depending on caffeine to keep her awake for days on end. They slowly discover that they are being hunted due to their parents being involved with Freddy's death. Nancy's mum revealed Krueger was an insane child murderer who had been released on a technicality and then burned alive by parents living on their street seeking vigilante justice. They attempt to bring Krueger out of the dream so they can kill him in the physical world. Could you stay awake for 7 days to avoid Freddy? I couldn't. In at number 2 we have Psycho 1960. This was the original slasher film. When Psycho premiered in 1960, the audiences were screaming in horror. They could not believe their eyes. It took the world by storm and instantly became a classic for horror lovers. Alfred Hitchcock wanted to shock audiences and do something no one else had ever done before. The audience were horrified that Marion Crane, the main character, had been so brutally murdered. Never before had a main character died in a film, and here she was stabbed repeatedly within the first 30 minutes. Hitchcock even received an angry letter from one man claiming his daughter is now refusing to shower thanks to this film. The film continues when Marion's sister starts to wonder where she is. Marion had stolen money from her previous job and was hoping to make a new life when she stumbled into the Bates Motel. Lila hires a private detective to look into the disappearance. Once he goes to the Bates Motel, he too never returns. When Lila and her partner Sam go to visit the house, they see Norman Bates in the window. They go to the police to report all of the mysterious disappearances, where they are told that Norman's mother, has been dead for 10 years. Later it is revealed that Norman Bates had multiple personalities and had been acting as himself and his mother since her death, killing unsuspecting women who visit the motel. It might not seem like much now, but this film was as terrifying and horrific as films came in the 60s and paved the way for the horror genre. Freaked me the out. I saw it at 4. Accidentally. And finally in at number 1, The Conjuring 2013. We're all very familiar with the Conjuring franchise, but did you know that the set of each film is thought to be haunted after many spooky happenings on set? The Conjuring series is based on the real experiences of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, so it makes sense that the spirits that the films are about might not be too happy about it. The first film released in 2013 and followed the story of a family who've just moved into a farmhouse when they start to suspect something is not right. They call in Ed and Lorraine to help save them from spirits within the home. The hauntings do not stop when the camera stopped rolling. Some of the cast members began to notice unexplained bruises over their bodies. Similar to this, the lead actress Vera Farmiga woke up one morning and noticed 3 claw-like scratches on her thigh. She said they didn't hurt, but it looked as though someone with long nails had dragged them over her skin. Vera seems to have got the worst of the hauntings and also woke up between 3 to 4 AM when she began filming. She was a little spooked, as the witching hour is something that has been talked about during the film. Was the set haunted by the original ghosts? I guess we'll never know, but probably.
Number 5, Halloween Ends. But will it though? Cause there's like 46 full-length movies in this universe, isn't there? Hey, and we love them all. Who am I kidding? Halloween Ends is an upcoming American slasher film directed and written by David Gordon Green, Danny McBride, Paul Brad Logan, and Chris Bernier. The current R-rated Halloween trilogy serves as a direct sequel to the 1978 original slasher, with a number of OG actors reprising their roles. It's the 13th installment in the Halloween franchise. Ooh, number 13, huh? The film is set to star the Queen of Screams herself, the legendary Jamie Lee Curtis, Will Patton, Kyle Richards, to name a few. Definitely some peeps reprising the roles from other Halloweens. I see that. I can't wait for this. Most of us have known this franchise, universe, multiverse, whatever you want to call it, our whole lives. Fast walks and jump scares. It's coming to a theater near you very soon, actually. In June 2018, before the release of Halloween 2018, McBride confirmed that he and Green had intended to pitch 2 films that would be shot back to back, but decided against it, waiting to see how the first film was perceived. In 2019, the film's title was announced along with Halloween Kills. The film will be produced by Jason Blum with Blumhouse Productions alongside Rough House, Miramax, and Trancas. Halloween Ends is scheduled to be released October 14th, 2022 by Universal Pictures. It will also stream simultaneously on Peacock for 60 days. I love these movies, man. The acting alone, like how do they act so scared? It's so believable. Just screaming all day, take after take. That's a lot of tea with honey and lemon, isn't it? Less is more always, and I'll definitely be having a night filled with chips, dips, and lots of hands in my face blocking the screen, you know? I'll do my best. That's how I watch scary movies. Just like, I can't see it at all. I'm a huge chicken, I'm not gonna lie. Number 4, Hellraiser. The Hellraiser franchise is back with this sci-fi supernatural horror we all love, which includes 4 films, 6 straight-to-home video films, various comic books and media, all based around the novella by English author Clive Barker titled The Hellbound Heart. The franchise centers around the Cenobites, including the primary antagonist we all love and fear, the infamous Pinhead. Next month, Hellraiser's back. The film is directed by David Bruckner, with screenplay by Ben Collins Collins and Luke Piotrowski from a story that they wrote with David Goyer. This project is intended to serve as a reimagining of Clive Barker's 1987 film and the 11th installment of the Hellraiser franchise. The film will follow closely to the source material novella written by Barker, The Hellbound Heart, and the film is going to star Odessa A'zion and Jamie Clayton, and is a co-production from the 20th Century Studios, Spyglass Media, and Phantom 4 Films. Plans for a Hellraiser remake was in talks in 2007, however, following the release of Hellraiser Revelations, to secure the rights, they had to hold off a bit. By 2018, after the critical and commercial success of Halloween, Miramax Films confirmed plans of a new Hellraiser project, including a prequel and reboot. The film was greenlit in 2019, with Bruckner directing a script written by Collins and Piotrowski, and shooting began September 2021. Hellraiser is scheduled to be released exclusively on Hulu as a Hulu original film this October 7th, 2022. I'm not gonna lie, this looks awesome. I wonder how they had to sit through all the hair and makeup though, you know? Just trying to drink a coffee, but you can't reach your own face. I made a wicked Hellraiser mask for Halloween one year, you know? Just a Jabberwocky's mask, smashed a bunch of nails right through it. Did the trick. Number 3, Dark Harvest. This looks pretty dark and twisted. Dark Harvest is an American upcoming fantasy horror film directed by David Slade and written by Michael Gillio based on the 2006 novel of the same name by Norman Partridge. Scheduled to be released in theaters September 9th, 2022. In early 2019, it was reported New Regency hired David Slade to direct the adaptation of Dark Harvest, with Michael Gillio writing the script and Mac Tolmack and David Mamperl producing. We know some of Slade's movies already, such as Hard Candy, Twilight Eclipse, and Bandersnatch. Great films, you know? Great shots. The plot, here we go. Every fall in a small Midwestern town, a supernatural specter named Sawtooth Jack arises from the cornfields and approaches the town's church, where violent gangs of young boys hungrily await their chance to confront the legendary nightmare in an annual harvest rite of life and death. Richie Shepherd lives in the shadow of his big brother, who won last year's October prize to get his ticket out of town. To prove to himself and his brother, Richie pairs up with the relentless dreamer Kelly Haynes, who will do whatever it takes to escape this dead-end town. Against the rules and against the odds, Richie and Kelly decide to hunt down the legendary nightmare themselves together. Okay, this sounds different. The nickname really shook me though, you know? Sawtooth Jack. Like, first and last names are scary enough sometimes. You don't need a visceral nickname from a cornfield, you know? Very terrifying. I guess we're gonna see this Jack Skellington meets Children of the Corn nightmare in the next couple of weeks, actually. Looks pretty awesome. The concept art alone. Very terrifying. Number 2, Jeepers Creepers Reborn. One of my favorite horror universes. These movies have kept me awake many, many hours. And, well, here we go again. Jeepers Creepers Reborn is an upcoming American horror film directed by Timo Vuorensola in his Hollywood debut. Written by Sean Michael Argo, it is the 4th film and a reboot in the Jeepers Creepers film series, meant to serve as the first in a planned trilogy set apart from Victor Salva's original trilogy. Okay, so same concept, different vision. I got it. We have a Snyder Cut. I get it. The film is scheduled to be released in the US September 19th, 2022 by Screen Media Films. Now, for the plot. The Horror Hound Festival is being held for the first time in Louisiana. Among the attendees are Chase and his girlfriend Lane, who begins to experience unexplained premonitions and disturbing visions associated with the town's past and the infamous Creeper. Principal photography started shooting in Jackson, Louisiana. Soon after, however, the production was moved to the UK due to the pandemic. Filming in the UK was split into 2 parts, the first in November 2020 at Black Hanger Studios and finished on December. The second filming chunk took place between January and February 2021. The title was officially confirmed as Jeepers Creepers Reborn in February 2021 when Screen Media Films acquired the rights in the US and Canada. At the 2021 European film market, Foresight Unlimited showed a promotional reel of footage for the international sales, and apparently it was pretty scary. Yeah, I can't wait for this one. I love these movies. They're campy, they're cheesy, they're absolutely terrifying. True story, my sister and I were watching the first one as kids and a giant moth flew in front of the porch light. Yeah, just like a 40-foot winged shadow on the wall. All of a sudden, mid-movie. Yeah, that'll keep you up. And number 1, we have Smile. Okay, this one looks the scariest by far, and I'm not sure if it's in the budget or it's just the neighborhood that I live in, but everyone smiles like this, you know? I'm looking forward to watching this, but I don't want to see it, you know? Smile is an upcoming American psychological horror film written and directed by Parker Finn in his feature film debut. It's based on his 2020 short film, Laura Hasn't Slept. Gonna rename that to Kyle Hasn't Slept after watching this one, 100%. Yeah. The film stars Sosie Bacon, Jesse T. Usher, Kyle Gallner, Caitlin Stacey, Cal Penn, and Rob Morgan. Smile will have its world premiere at Fantastic Fest on September 22nd, 2022, and is scheduled to be released in the US September 30th, 2022 by Paramount Pictures. Alright, so we'll get a better idea in the next couple of weekends. Also, which movie do you think of when you see the Paramount logo? You know what I mean? Mine's Grease. Every time I see it, I just feel like Grease Lightning's coming up. I don't know. Okay, now the plot. After witnessing a bizarre traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality. The short film won the Special Jury Recognition Prize for South by Southwest's Midnight Short category. In September 2021, the film was announced under a different title, however, of Something's Wrong. Shooting began October 11th in New Jersey and finished in November. Okay, so a nice little quick turnaround, you know? They had like a one-take kind of day. Yo, imagine walking around and everyone's just smiling like Mr. Burns at you all day. That's horrifying. I think I would just bird box myself and just blindfold up, you know? Just start swinging. Yeah, this looks great. I can't wait. I watched the trailer and then I started seeing people smiling at me on the way home. You know what I mean? Terrifying. What do you think?
In our opening spot today, we have none other than Borderland. Ryder Strong and Sean Astin starred in this film that centers on three friends who head down to Mexico to celebrate their college graduation, but stumble upon a cult that practices human sacrifice. The film is loosely based on the life of Adolfo Constanzo, an American-born serial killer and cult leader who moved to Mexico City as an adult, where he met friends who would become his future followers. Constanzo was also baptized Catholic and served as an altar boy, but then he accompanied his mother on trips to Haiti to learn about voodoo. As a, adolescent, he became apprenticed to a local sorcerer and began to practice a religion called Palo Mayombe, which involves animal sacrifice. As an adult, Constanzo moved to Mexico City and met the men who were to become his followers: Martin Quintana, George Montes, and Omar Orea. They began to run a profitable business, casting spells to bring good luck, which involved expensive ritual sacrifices of chickens, goats, snakes, zebras, and even lion cubs. Many of his clients were rich dealers and hitmen who enjoyed the violence of Constanzo's magical displays. He also attracted other rich members of Mexican society, including several high-ranking corrupt policemen who introduced him to the city's powerful cartels. Specifically, his cult was said to be associated with the notable Gulf Cartel. Constanzo started to raid graveyards for human bones to put in his cauldron, but before long his cult decided that the spirits of the dead would be stronger, ergo providing the cult more powerful protection with live human sacrifices instead of old bones. The resulting killings soon totaled more than 20 victims, whose mutilated bodies were found in and around Mexico City. This process escalated until Constanzo eventually decided that the gang needed the power of a brain from an American student, culminating with the 1989 killing of Mark Kilroy. So Constanzo was nicknamed the Godfather by his cult members, or El Padrino, and he led the cult with Sarah Aldrete, who the followers nicknamed the Godmother, La Madrina. The cult was involved in multiple ritualistic killings in Matamoros, including, the Mark Kilroy one that I just mentioned. So, the film adaptation was given an approval rate of 100% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 8 views, with an average rating of 6.8 out of 10. Chloe Pacey from Dread Central gave the film a score of 4 out of 5, commending the film's performances, realistic characters, and overexposed look. Scott Kalura from IGM commended the film's realistic feel, writing, "Every once in a while, a film can defy expectations, and this one was one such case." He mentioned that it was a great watch and scary enough on its own, even if you didn't know the historical content. Which, hey, now you all know the context, so you could enjoy it even more. Next up, we have The Rite. Gosh, what a doozy. It is a 2011 supernatural horror film directed by Michael Hafstrom and written by Michael Petroni. It is loosely based on Matt Baglio's book, The Rite, The Making of a Modern Exorcist, which itself is based on actual events as witnessed and recounted by American, then exorcist in training, Father Gary Thomas, and his experiences of being sent to Rome to be trained and work daily with veteran clergy of the practice. To research the book, Baglio participated in a seminar on exorcism by the Vatican-sponsored Pontifical Athenaeum, Regina Apostolorum, where he met Father Gary Thomas, a parish priest from Sacred Heart Church in Saratoga, California, who was tasked by the local bishop in San Jose to become an exorcist for the diocese. Initially skeptical and reluctant, Father Gary becomes an apprentice to the Rome-based exorcist, and his skepticism is soon replaced by the cold reality of evil and the ways it sometimes takes the form of demonic possession. The book traces Father Gary's life prior to and subsequent to the acquaintance in 2005, which involved Baglio observing over 20 exorcisms performed by Father Gary. Baglio indicates that the experience in writing the book was just a very spiritual process and in a lot of ways helped him reconnect to the church and understand the value of faith. This isn't something that is silly in prayer, it was very important. While Baglio was still researching his book, producers Trip Vinson and Beau Flynn, who had already produced The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I'll be talking about that later, learned about Baglio's book proposal and decided to purchase the movie rights. The producers contacted Michael Petroni, who was one of the writers for The Chronicles of Narnia, the voyage of Don Treader to write the screenplay, and Petroni, a practicing Catholic, coordinated the development of his screenplay with Baglio, who was now reading the book at about the same time. It's a race to the finish. Halfsham was invited to direct the film and was intrigued by the fact that he would be working from facts, not just somebody's imagination. So while the film is focused on demonic possession and exorcism, Halfsham also believes that this story is about a young man finding himself and finding his way. In preparation for the film, Halfsham attended some exorcisms in Rome, but was never present in the actual room, but he could still hear what was taking place. Father Gary served as a consultant on the set of the film and indicated that the exorcisms in the film were very accurate, with some expected licenses taken, which is super chilling to think about. The film stars Anthony Hopkins, Colin O'Donoghue, Alice Braga, Sarah Hinds, and Rutger Hauer. How did I find out about this movie? Well, I was a big fan of Once Upon a Time back when it was on the air. Specifically, Captain Hook. Something about a bad boy guyliner will always do it for me. Alright, we're moving on before Alexa starts swooning and debating a rewatch. Ever heard of Stuck? I think it's a bit of a lesser known title, but hey, correct me if I'm wrong, you're pretty good for that. After committing a hit and run where a victim becomes launched in a windshield, a young nursing assistant named Brandy, played by Mina Suvari, tries to figure out her next course of action. Brandy is based on Shante Joanne Mallard, a Texan woman who hit Gregory Glenn Biggs, a homeless man, and left him embedded in her windshield until he died. At the time, Mallard was believed to have been driving well intoxicated by a combination of giggleweed, fun powder, and booze. Yeah, have fun deciphering that mess. You don't want to know how long it took me to find words to substitute the originals with that weren't going to result in this video getting knocked off the interweb. Mallard then drove home, leaving the injured Biggs stuck in her windshield, and parked her car in her garage. After the accident, Mallard did not notify the police, and she didn't get Biggs any medical attention, even though she was a nursing assistant at the time. Every once in a while, she'd return to the garage to check on his status, and he died several hours later. Imagine dying out over that long. That's the actual worst, no thank you. So afterwards, Mallard called a male friend, Clyde Jackson, for assistance. Mallard, Jackson, and Jackson's cousin, Herbert Tyrone, took the body to a park and left it there, even going so far as to set a fire to the car in an attempt to disguise the evidence. The three were later each convicted on charges of tampering with evidence for this action. Mallard became a suspect after she was reported talking and laughing about the incident at a party about 4 months after the events. She was convicted and sentenced to 50 years in prison for her crime. Well, let the record show that hubris was the downfall of a crime somebody could have apparently gotten away with. Seriously, she and her buddies went through all that work to dispose of the body and hid the evidence, only for her to get busted from bragging about it? Like, I see this all the time with people bragging about committing crimes on TikTok and whatnot. Like, folks, do the words digital footprint and statute of limitations mean nothing to you? I do have to mention that the movie adaptation rightfully attracted some criticism for whitewashing, which So Mina Suvari, who I mentioned before, she is a white actor, and she played the character based on Shante, who is of African American descent. And she did this while wearing cornrows, which, yikes. Learn from your mistakes, folks. Alrighty, I've left you waiting long enough. Time to talk about the exorcism of Emily Rose. This is definitely a situation where my bias comes into play, since the real case behind this flick is a favorite tragedy of mine. After performing an exorcism on the young Emily Rose, played by Jennifer Carpenter, a priest is sent to jail for her death. But when a lawyer picks up the case, they may have no choice but to believe the unbelievable. What really happened to Emily Rose? In ultra-religious circles, exorcisms are of course a very real and not outmoded practice. Even The Exorcist was loosely based on an actual incident, but The Exorcism of Emily Rose is more specific in its inspiration. This movie intertwines supernatural horror with a courtroom drama, exploring the tragic consequences that followed a young woman's alleged possession. Director Scott Derrickson blends those facts with a liberal sprinkling of fiction, creating an interesting mix of psychological thriller, demonic horror, and courtroom drama. So, what's the real story? Back in 1975, a young German woman named Anneliese Michel began experiencing seizures and hallucinations. She would black out at school and began walking around in what her friends and family described as a trance-like state, and she couldn't recall any of it. A year later, Anneliese experienced a similar occurrence, where she woke up in a trance after her body went through a series of convulsions, causing it to shake uncontrollably. So after this, Anneliese visited a neurologist who diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a disorder that causes seizures, loss of memory, and experiencing visual and auditory hallucinations. But the medication she was given failed to help her. So as the year progressed, her condition got way worse. She began to see the face of the devil wherever she went, and constantly heard demons whispering in her ears. When she heard the demons telling her she was damned and would rot in hell while she was praying, she concluded that the devil himself must be possessing her. But the knowledge that she was possessed consuming her, poor thing constantly ripped the clothes off her body, compulsively performed up to 400 squats a day, crawled under a table, barked like a dog. She even ate spiders and coal, bit the head off of a dead bird, licked her own fluids from the floor. Poor thing. So at the begging of her Catholic parents, 2 local priests initiated dozens of exorcism rites until she eventually passed from malnutrition, and her parents were then charged with negligent homicide. It's just an awful situation all around. Okie dokie, we're ending today with the most popular title on our list, Nightmare on Elm Street. Now this prompted me to ask a friend of mine if I was the last person to find out this was based on a true story, and well, she left me unread. So I guess you'll have to let me know in the comments. The film is credited with carrying on many tropes found in low-budget horror films of the 70s and 80s, which originated in John Carpenter's 1978 horror film Halloween, including the morality play that revolves around schmexual promiscuity in young folks, resulting in their eventual death, leading to the term slasher film. Wes Craven's 1984 masterpiece centers on a killer who stalks his prey while they're sleeping. In an interview with Vulture for the film's 30th anniversary, the late Craven shared that the film's premise was inspired by newspaper articles from the Los Angeles Times about male Southeast Asian refugees who died in their sleep. Many men would reportedly refuse to sleep because of the nightmares that they feared would lead to death, with a total of 26 men passing away in 1981. By the way, in 2021, A Nightmare on Elm Street was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry. A Nightmare on Elm Street was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, and I absolutely agree with that.
Number 4. The Amityville Horror. Another haunted house story, and wouldn't you know it, another one attached to Ed and Lorraine Warren. If there was a haunted house in the Midwestern United States in the 1970s and they made a movie about it, well, by gum, those 2 names will come up a lot. They were very busy. The Amityville Horror has been made into a movie a few times, first in 1979 and again in 2005, if you can remember that terrible period when Hollywood was dredging up every single horror franchise and rebooting them terribly. Both movies are based on a real-life famous haunting, however, and while details vary between the films pretty wildly, let's see how they stack up against the original case. In 1973, a man named Ronald DeFeo slayed his family in a brutal crime, claiming that he had heard voices that had commanded him to do it, and there was some entity in the house. 13 months later, the Lutz family bought the house. The realtors had warned them about the house's grisly past, but it didn't bother them. You know how the housing market is. A friend of the family told them that it would be wise to have the house blessed since there could still be evil inside the walls. After the family moved in, they described all sorts of paranormal wrongdoings going on. Green viscous slime coming up the staircases, voices speaking out to them, telling them to get out, flies all over the house, and the family even seeing wild things like specters. Now that's all pretty bad, but the film adaptations really take it up to the extreme. In the films, the Lutz family faces spirits directly, seeing ghosts, the father even gets possessed and attacks the family dog. Now, nothing this extreme happened in the actual haunting case, but there was a photo that was released that appears to show a ghostly boy walking across a staircase. But there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not it's legitimate or whether or not anything involving the haunting was legitimate at all, as there are many who feel that it was faked by the Warrens and hyped up a little bit to try and make it a much more interesting story so they could sell books or movies. Well, real or not, it definitely worked, as the book was a smash hit and there have been dozens of movies since, meaning we're not leaving Amityville anytime soon. Number 2. Annabelle. Another famous story from the Warrens' legacy. We knew we'd be seeing them again. Based around probably the most famous and recognizable haunted item in the Warrens' Museum of the Occult, Annabelle. The real Annabelle is a cursed Raggedy Ann doll that was one of the first cases the Warrens ever investigated. Now the real Annabelle already looks pretty unsettling and isn't the kind of thing I would ever give to a child, but her Hollywood glow-up made her even more terrifying. The story of the film and the legend of the real Annabelle differ pretty greatly though. In the film, Annabelle is given off as a gift from a husband to his pregnant wife, whereas in reality, the Raggedy Ann doll was given to a nursing student, Donna, by her mother as a small gift. The film does feature Donna and her roommate Angie speaking to the Warrens at the beginning, describing their experiences with the doll. That's kind of where the 2 stories stop being the same and start differing greatly. The original story, Donna claims that the doll would move around their home, appearing in random places, occasionally having red stains on her no one could explain. She would complain that her and her roommate would wake up covered in scratches, again, no one could explain. They said they would find notes scrawled in red writing across the home, reading cryptic things like "Help us" or "Help Lou," the name of Donna's roommate's fiance. The most extreme thing any of them ever reported was that Donna's fiance claims one night while staying over, he felt something crawling on his leg, and when he looked to see what it was, he saw Annabelle on his leg and claims the doll leapt up at him. He woke up the next morning completely unsure if what he had experienced was real or not. Now from there, they contacted a medium to arrange a seance to see if they were dealing with something truly evil. From here, the Warrens were put in contact to help them and take Annabelle off their friends. While the real story is no doubt spine-chilling, the movie got a lot more dramatic, involving satanic cults, deaths, house fires, and a whole lot more. But still, I probably wouldn't want to spend any time near the real Annabelle, just in case.